Calm and serene mountains of eastern Tennessee. But in the midst of those mountains sits an explosive little bull ring. It's called Bristol International Raceway.
You could be running real good at Bristol, leading the race and going on, and all of a sudden it's breakdown, you're busted.
This is a town where everyone is reaching for the top. This is a place where second best will never do. It's okay to want you shine, but once you step across that line, no matter where you hide, I'm coming after you. Shake down, break down, take down, everybody wants you to cry now. Break down, take down, you're busted.
At Bristol, you can touch me once, or you can touch me twice. But don't touch me that third time. I'm going to be watching.
Touch you twice, I won't let go at any price. I need you now, like I need you then. You always said we meet again someday.
In Bristol, Tennessee, a race on the high banks is something to behold. But in the heat of the night, it's unbelievable.
Right here. This is what people pay to see, I think. Sparks flying up against the wall, down on the apron, whatever happens, wherever it happens, just let it all hang out.
Break down, take down, everybody wants into the crowded line. Break down, take down, shake down, you're busted.
To Bristol International Raceway in eastern Tennessee, and this is a wild crowd here tonight. They've been waiting all afternoon and some all morning for the 7:30 start for the Busch 500 Winston Cup race. Good evening, everybody. I'm Bob Jenkins along with Larry Newber. We are set for some excitement tonight. Stay with us for about 3 hours of excellent racing. You know, in any Winston Cup race, you can figure on maybe 20 drivers being capable of winning a race. But, Larry, probably 3 that you look at realistically here tonight.
Well, 3 come to your mind first, that's all. I must also pick up on your comment. The crowd here is very infectious. Let's talk about first Terry Labonte, our pole setter. It's the 4th time this year he has sat on the pole. He has yet to win in 1987 on the Winston Cup Trail. Think about Dale Earnhardt. He is undefeated on the short tracks. 4 short track races, 4 wins for Earnhardt. And what of Darrell Waltrip? The much anticipated resurgence of Darrell. This might be the best track for it to happen at. He has won 10 times here in his career. And whether you're watching in Southern California or maybe in the Midwest or here in the Deep South, stay tuned because Bristol can be incredibly visual.
The editor of Stock Car Racing magazine, Dick Berggren, one of 2 reporters on pit road tonight. Dick?
Well, Bob Jenkins, the odds-on favorite to win tonight will be driving this car. Terry Labonte qualified at a full mile an hour faster than anybody else. Up and down pit road, the crews say this team is overdue. They've been running up in the front of the pack. They should win soon. Labonte has won here. He knows the way to victory lane, but his crew has won here 21 times. That's almost half the events that have been run on this speedway. And put this one into your statistical pipe. 3 of the 4 poles Labonte has won this year have been in races sponsored by Anheuser-Busch. His car is sponsored by Anheuser-Busch's Bud brand. Tonight is the Busch 500. He has a good shot to win here. For more statistical information on who may win tonight, here's Jerry Punch.
Well, if you're superstitious, and a lot of these drivers and crew members are, Barry Dodson is the car crew chief for Rusty Wallace. Rusty Wallace drives car number 27. Now, when they came to the racetrack today, they exited the interstate on exit 27. When Barry Dodson checked into the hotel, they gave him room number 327. When he took the crew to lunch today, they were placed at table number 27. And when the car went out to practice, as it left pit road, he looked down, and laying on the ground was a quarter and 2 pennies, 27 cents. Well, if you believe in omens, it could be Rusty Wallace's night tonight here at Bristol International Raceway. The crew just hopes he doesn't finish 27th.
Well, the the command has been given to start engines. The crowd is on its feet, and we are ready for the Busch 500 from Bristol International Raceway in Tennessee. And it's all being brought to you by Busch Beer, the beer with a taste as smooth as its name. To move away and take a couple of warm-up laps before we get the green flag for tonight's Busch 500 Winston Cup race. It should be a dandy. Here is the starting lineup for the event. On the pole with a new track record is Terry Labonte, qualifying at 115.758 miles an hour, the Budweiser Chevrolet. Outside on row number 1 will be Jeff Bodine from Chemung, New York, and the number 5 Levi Garrett Exxon Chevrolet. In the second row, Ken Schrader in number 90, the Red Baron Frozen Pizza Ford. Outside of row number 2 will be Alan Kulwicki from Concord, North Carolina, in the Z-Rex Antifreeze Aluguard Ford. Starting in row number 3 will be Harry Gant from Taylorsville, North Carolina, in the Food Lion Skull Bandit Chevy. And outside on row number 3 will be Dale Earnhardt from Kannapolis, North Carolina, in the Wrangler GM Chevrolet. Now in the fourth row, it'll be Ricky Rudd in the Motorcraft Ford, and outside of row number 4 will be Rusty Wallace from Fenton, Missouri. Going to row number 5, it'll be Darrell Waltrip in the number 17 Tide Exxon AC Chevrolet. Outside of row number 5 will be Dave Marcus in the number 71 Helen Ray Lifebuoy Chevrolet. Now the rest of the starting field, the sixth row, Sterling Marlin and Michael Waltrip. In row number 7, Benny Parsons and Bobby Allison. Starting in the 8th row, Bill Elliott and Rick Wilson. Back in row number 9, Kyle Petty and Bobby Hillen Jr. In the 10th row, Neil Bonnet and Richard Petty. Morgan Shepherd and Phil Parsons make up row number 11. In the 12th row, Dale Jarrett and Brad Teague. Row 13, Jimmy Means and Steve Chrisman. In the 14th row, Ronnie Thomas and Derek Cope. And in the 15th row, Buddy Arrington and Rodney Combs. The pace car dives off the high banking. Here comes the 30-car field, led by pole sitter Terry Labonte, looking for a green flag, and they get it. We're racing at Bristol. Labonte has jumped into the lead over Jeff Bodine and Alan Kulwicki as they complete lap number 1. The laps are very short here, about 15 seconds. Dale Earnhardt is running in 4th position. In 5th is Rusty Wallace. Ken Schrader is 6th, then Harry Gant.
Start philosophy is always the first interesting moment of every Winston Cup race. Terry Labonte bringing him down very controlled. Jeff Bodine being a good little boy on the outside. Just followed through and Terry got the jump. Here is the picture looking back toward Dale Earnhardt out of the rear window of Alan Kulwicki in the Z-Rex Ford.
He's carrying our Hardee's in-car camera for tonight's event. And Dale Earnhardt is trying to gain a position and pass Alan Kulwicki. Alan right now is in 3rd position, holding back Dale Earnhardt in 4th. As the lead continues to be held by Terry Labonte with Jeff Bodine 2nd.
Note the light level in the sky, because that will change if you're watching in one of the Pacific Coast time zones. It's going to be dark here long before this race is over. And as this race wears on, you'll see the skies get increasingly darker, and the temporary lighting that has been brought in here at great expense to illuminate this racetrack will take over. It will change significantly, and the view that the drivers get, Bob, also changes.
Already some sideways maneuvering out there on the racetrack as Rusty Wallace was almost sideways coming off turn number 4. It was nearly 3 abreast there in the 4th turn with Kulwicki, Dale Earnhardt, and Rusty Wallace. And you can see from the shots within the car that it is a relatively rough racetrack. I mean,
well, Bob, it's rough because of the speed. You're covering so much ground in such a short period of time, and it's high banked. It's just impossible to make a half-mile high bank track smooth as satin.
Back in the pack, we see Benny Parsons, Bobby Hillen Jr., and Kyle Petty contesting position. And right behind him, the number 4 yellow car driven by Rick Wilson.
And the smoke from underneath Kyle Petty is undoubtedly tire rub. That is perhaps the most serious potential problem the crews face here. You have to set the car up relatively stiff to get the good speed out of it, but you also have to be careful that the tires do not rub against the sidewalls, the inside walls, and the bodywork. That's what's happening right now to Kyle Petty.
Bobby Hillen Jr. is trying to take 15th position away from Benny Parsons. Some contact there, it appeared, coming out of turn number 2. But everybody is okay. Benny Parsons 15th, Bobby Hillen Jr. 16th, and Kyle Petty in 17th position. Benny's crew has been working very hard on this car. He was the first out for practice, and there you can see that Dale Earnhardt has passed Alan Kulwicki, and Earnhardt moves to 3rd.
Dale Earnhardt, after after trailing Alan Kawicki for 10 laps. Kawicki drops down to the inside of the racetrack, coming down the front stretch, and Rusty Wallace goes by. Now Kenny Schrader is putting the challenges on Alan Kawicki. Kenny is right now behind Alan as we're looking at this view of Rusty Wallace up front. Watch for Kenny Schrader to try on the high side. Watch for Schrader in the Red Baron frozen pizza car. There you see him ducking down behind. Harry Gant is also trailing in the green car. Yes, Harry Gant, this is one of his better weekends of the last couple of months so far.
There is the view from the grandstand as we have it. And again, you can see some tire smoke coming off the number 90 car of Ken Schrader, indicating perhaps the car not set up exactly the way that Ken would like to. And there's Harry Gant right behind Ken Schrader, and that is Ricky Rudd behind Harry. So indeed, Harry at least off to a good start here tonight, as he did turn in the fifth best qualifying effort last night.
Other cars running up in the lead group. Now this order changes, of course, in these early laps. We've mentioned Gant, Rudd. Darrell Waltrip is right there. Dave Marcus have another good contest. Sterling Marlin, Michael Waltrip, Bobby Allison, and Bill Elliott. That group of cars we've documented, plus those, are kind of distancing themselves away from everybody else.
Well, Alan Kawicki was running third, is now back to fifth, but the report is that there's nothing wrong with the car. Alan just perhaps out of shape a little bit that allowed him to lose those couple of positions.
Bob, let me share with you an interesting conversation that I had with Alan in the pits. And I had this really with a couple of guys, and we go back up front and look at Terry Labonte, who is running comfortably, and now to Darrell Waltrip, I think we're headed for, who is running in the top 10. The conversation with Kawicki was, the question was, why race hard in the first 300 laps or so of a race here at Bristol? So we look at Bobby Hillin Jr., Richard Petty, and Morgan Shepherd. Petty goes to the inside of Bobby Hillin Jr. as he gets sideways coming out of turn 4. So much happens here at Bristol that you wonder why people race. Maybe that's on Kawicki's mind. Too early to tell.
Bobby Hillin Jr. in 18th. There's Richard Petty in 19th, and Morgan Shepherd is trying to work the high side of the racetrack. And along with him is Neil Bond in the number 75 Valvoline car. Morgan Shepherd to the high side of the racetrack, trying to gain some positions. He had a very poor qualifying effort last night that put him back in the field as far as the starting position. He started 21st, but would like to move up through the pack here in the early going to make sure that he stays on the lead lap.
And the names most mentioned as the favorites for this race prior to qualifying yesterday was that green and white Quaker State Buick number 26, Morgan Shepherd, Jeff Bodine, Dale Earnhardt, of course, and Rusty Wallace. Those are the names most mentioned. Some people were saying, yeah, Labonte, but as odd makers will tell you, it's against the odds of winning until you do. And so far in 1987, Terry Labonte hasn't.
Just look how close these cars are when they come off the corners. Out of turn number 2, a little bit of paint traded perhaps, and some more traded between Bobby Hillin Jr. and Richard Petty.
Hillin and Petty are really going at it. Bobby Hillin Jr., you can tell how much he's leaning on that chassis as he goes around the corners. The Panhard bar is trying to keep the bodywork off of the tire rubbing, but it's just not doing its job up front.
And a battle for second position. Jeff Bodine trying to hold off Dale Earnhardt. Earnhardt to the high side of the racetrack. The car bottoming out just a little. Sparks flying from underneath. He's alongside Jeff Bodine at the start-finish line. They're wheel to wheel into turn number 1. Dale Earnhardt grabs second spot.
Reminding you once again, there have been 4 short track races in 1987. This is the 5th one. The winner of the first, Earnhardt. Second, Earnhardt. Third, Earnhardt. Fourth, Earnhardt. He's undefeated on tracks under 1 mile in length.
And there is the interval between first and second. Terry Labonte continues to lead. Earnhardt just a few car lengths behind, and then Jeff Bodine in third. We're live at International Raceway for the Busch. Has caught Terry Labonte. That's the battle for first position. And here is a story. Bill Elliott has had to come in for a pit stop. It's very easy to lose a lap here because when something happens, as was the case with Bill Elliott, you have to come in and change a tire. Remember, laps here only about 15, 16 seconds. And when that happens, you lose a lap. But on the other hand, it's not all that difficult to make up a lap if you can catch a caution flag.
In the spring race, Kenny Schrader was once down 4 laps. Matter of fact, he was down laps twice. Total of 4, and he made them up and was on the lead lap when he eventually crashed out.
That pink car, by the way, that they just passed was Brad Teague from North Wilkesboro, North Carolina. There's the average speed of the race so far with 29 laps completed, a little over 111 miles an hour. We've got the first 4 cars running nose to tail on the racetrack. That's Terry Labonte, Dale Earnhardt, Jeff Bodine, and Rusty Wallace.
Rusty Wallace goes to the high side of Jeff Bodine. This was the corner that was the demise of Jeff Bodine in the spring race. Twice on that end of the racetrack he was involved in incidents, and eventually he was taken out of the race here at Bristol.
Rusty Wallace working on Jeff Bodine for that third position. Rusty has enjoyed some very incredible experiences here in the last couple of weeks. He and his wife Patty, of course, had their third child born to them just last week, a little boy. He recently moved into a new house. Of course, he won the Watkins Glen race. He ran very well in Michigan last week, and we have a car spinning on the main straightaway. It is Phil Parsons, and it looks like that everybody is going to get around him. Oh, no, Jimmy Means is involved, spinning down the straightaway also.
Just not even touching the wall. Jimmy Means just missing the wall. Everybody else has now got her hunkered down. Derek Cope, Dale Earnhardt, and Jeff Bodine were among drivers doing excellent jobs that time. Coming around the start-finish line, they've already crossed the finish line. Harold Kinder trying to get them slowed down. Derek Cope trying to get his lap back, but to no avail. I think the cars had crossed the finish line after the caution flag was out, Bob.
So both Phil Parsons and Jimmy Means spin here on the main straightaway, but I don't believe that either car touched anything.
No, Jimmy particularly, I thought he had bought the inside wall, but he survived it.
So the first caution of the evening comes out on lap number 34.
It was an example of how quickly things happen. Now watch for Derek Cope in the red and white number 19. He does not have the experience on these very fast, short half-mile tracks as many of the other drivers do.
We'll hold off on that replay so that we can take another break and be back with more of the Busch 500 from Bristol International Raceway. At Bristol because of a spin on the main straightaway involving Phil Parsons and Jimmy Means. And here's a replay.
Phil Parsons there at the top of your screen. You see him sliding down the front stretch. Here come the leaders. There goes Dale Jarrett by, Buddy Arrington. You can see Derek Cope there in a white car. And there comes Jimmy Means coming out of control as Steve Crispin threads his way between Means and the 55 car of Phil Parsons. Kenny Schrader and Alan Kowicki are the next to go through. There goes Darrell Waltrip and Ricky Rudd here again.
Now, just before we had this caution period, Bill Elliott came into the pits. Let's find out why by going to Dr. Jerry Punch.
Well, Elliott came in for a flat right front tire, a cut tire. He lost a single lap. But don't fear, because remember the guy who won this race a year ago, Darrell Waltrip, cut a right side tire in the first 100 laps, and he ended up winning. Dale Earnhardt, likewise, back in April, cut a right side tire 70 laps into the race, and he ended up winning. So Elliott a lap down, but he's not out here at Bristol.
It'll be interesting to watch the restart here. The pace car pulls off. They're going to get the green flag now. Bill can get out ahead of Terry Labonte, and then we have another caution. Bill will make up that lost lap. Here comes the field, though, and Labonte stands on the gas long before Bill does. Bill not off to a real good start. He's being passed by several on the outside of the racetrack as the race resumes, and Terry Labonte continues in the lead. Earnhardt is still second. That's Rusty Wallace in third, and then Jeff Bodine.
Another one of the potential contenders who made a pit stop. During that brief yellow was Morgan Shepherd. Now, we haven't seen anything from Shepherd. He had a spark plug problem, which prevented him from qualifying up near the front. He came back and later got into the field, but he is now in the back of the pack. But he's been trying to climb up that mountain. Hasn't had as much success in the race here as he has had in practice this week.
Will this be Terry Labonte's night to win a Winston Cup race in 1987? He should feel very confident as Carl Jr. Johnson has many wins on this racetrack.
Terry Labonte, you're driving for the winningest team in Bristol history, 21 events. Does that give you extra confidence coming here?
Well, it really does. I know last year in this event, I finished second to this race car, and I said to myself, I can't wait till this year so I can be in it.
Now, your team at one point won 8 in a row here at Bristol. Do they still have the technological edge that they had at that time?
Well, I sure hope so. They've been awful strong here over the years. You know, this has probably been one of their best racetracks. Won an awful lot of races here. The car always runs good here.
Is this your best shot to win?
Well, I don't know if it's our best shot. We've had some good shots in the past, but it's as good as any.
Soft-spoken Terry Labonte thinks tonight could be his night, but he has his hands full right now with Dale Earnhardt, who is pressing him for that lead. Here's a good battle side by side as Darrell Waltrip has come on to challenge Alan Kowicki, and that is for 5th position. Darrell taking over 5th, and you can see the action from Alan Kowicki's car.
This is a 500 lap race. We've completed just 45 laps as Terry Labonte tries to continue to fend off Dale Earnhardt, who apparently, or at least visually, is running quicker than Labonte. Earnhardt will try the high side coming out of turn number 4. Screeches those tires around the 35-degree banking, but not this lap. It's still Labonte's track.
Well, it looks like that Dale has been using that higher groove throughout the evening, trying to gain the advantage, but it's just not working for him. Of course, it is further around the racetrack up there.
Yes, it is, but usually you can keep the RPMs up a little higher up there. It is further to go around, but the car normally maintains a higher constant speed up there.
Well, back in the pack, we have Harry Gant, Dave Marcus, Sterling Marlin, Bobby Allison, and the number 22 car, Bobby Allison, and behind him is Kyle Petty.
Kyle Petty, then Rick Wilson, Richard Petty, Kenny Schrader, Neil Bonnet, Morgan Shepherd, Bobby Hillen Jr., and Benny Parsons. Those are all the people who are in contention for the 10th spot right now.
There's Sterling Marlin in the number 44 Piedmont Airlines Oldsmobile. Now there is Harry Gant, who is up high on the racetrack, and it looks like getting some tire smoke from that car. Of course, Sterling Marlin, you remember, led here at this race last year.
Now, if you start thinking ahead toward pit stops, note that 500 laps on roughly a half-mile track is about 250 miles. If you want to go approximately 100 miles, that's 200 laps on one load of fuel. We've gone only 50 of the 200, but the crews, everybody figures there will be at least 6 cautions, maybe more here. And as the cautions begin to unfold, so does the race strategy. The race strategy here, more than anywhere else in the circuit, is determined by the number of caution flags and where they fall, not race distance.
Bobby Allison there in the number 22 Miller American Buick. He has 4 wins on this racetrack. And that's the third highest among the drivers participating in this race tonight. Of course, Darrell Waltrip has the most, 10. And Dale Earnhardt has 5 wins on this racetrack. And then comes Bobby Allison. And the leaders begin to work around slower traffic. And the first 3 are right together on the racetrack. Rusty Wallace is trying to find a way around Earnhardt. And Earnhardt still running that higher groove, trying to pass Terry Labonte.
All that tire smoke, he adds a judgment. Oh, the leaders get very close going through 3 and 4. Now, there's only about 3 or 4 30-seconds of an inch of rubber, the outer layer, on these Goodyear Eagle racing tires. But all that tire smoke normally does not cause you a problem. Unless it's extremely severe, it does not cause excessive tire wear. But it does become a judgment call.
Labonte and Earnhardt going at it. And Rusty Wallace is also right there. Rusty sideways in turn 2, saved it though.
Now, what all that tire smoke can indicate is the car is running much looser than what the driver would prefer. That means the tail end wants to come around and get around the corners faster than the front end. You can figure out that's no good. Here comes Earnhardt.
This may be it. Off of corner number 2 down the backstretch. Dale pulls alongside and pulls ahead of Terry Labonte. We have a lead change. Let's see if it holds through the start-finish line. Yes, it will. Earnhardt leads.
Recall, earlier in this season, the number of leading laps that Dale Earnhardt had accumulated was about at the 60 percentile mark. He had led 60% of all the laps in Winston Cup racing. That has dropped off in the last couple of months, but Dale Earnhardt has continued to win.
Earnhardt, of course, the leader in Winston Cup points going into this race. And he has the lead on the entire field at this moment as we are 58 laps into this 500 lapper at Bristol. We'll be back with more of our live coverage right after these messages. Another caution flies over Bristol International Raceway as Dave Marcus got into trouble coming off of corner number 4. The yellow comes out on lap number 64. And really, Dave was lucky to have escaped with as little damage as he had.
What started it was Buddy Arrington slowed on the outside of the racetrack. And as the field came around number 4, you can't see when you're in the middle of the corner, but maybe 30 or 40 feet ahead of you, everybody jumps on the brakes, but it's often too late. There's Bobby Allison bumping against Sterling Marlin. Rick Wilson doing his best to avoid Kyle Petty. There is Harry Gant after having been collided with the 71 car of Dave Marcus.
Here's Dick Berggren.
Well, Earnhardt is making his pit stop now, and it's lucky he's making it now and not earlier, because on the last yellow flag, these guys faked a pit stop. They decided that they were going to try everything. They ran the air wrenches, and one of them didn't work right. 27, Rusty Wallace also in. So on that fake pit stop, they discovered their problem, fixed it, and Earnhardt beat everybody out except Rusty Wallace. Rusty got him at the very tail end of pit road.
Several other cars making pit stops, including Bill Elliott. He's in again. Richard Petty just finishing up his pit stop and rolling back out. Now Elliott gets going again. Morgan Shepherd is in. Now there are pits on both the front stretch and the back stretch here, and Morgan is pitted over on the back stretch.
Lap number 64, and as we indicated a little earlier in this broadcast, it's not nearly as significant here at Bristol to know what lap they pit, particularly in the first half of the race. There is Dave Marcus, who slid into Harry Gant. He appeared to get the worst of it. Benny Parsons is in, and as Bob, you mentioned the tire. It gets humid at night here in the mountains. The hot tire comes off the cars, gets into that nice cool night air, and you have the dew point.
And there is Sterling Marlin, the number 44 Piedmont Underalls machine, in for a stop. Benny Parsons has completed his pit stop and is rejoining the field. Harry Gant has come in for some service. There he goes. And finally, Sterling Marlin goes out onto the racetrack. The number 7 car of Alan Kulwicki is in the lead. He didn't make a pit stop, and, well, that's not really too bad an idea because he picks up Winston Cup points for leading a lap.
It'll be interesting to see if he ducks into the pits now. He may elect to stay out. Alan is not running on quite the budget that many of the other top teams are. Alan has been a top team. However, in the last month, he's been very close to victory on a number of occasions, performed well on the road course at Watkins Glen, lost on the last lap to Earnhardt at the Pocono racetrack. This is one of the original short track car of Alan Kulwicki, but he's doing well. I kind of expect him to stay out.
Well, Ken Schrader, remember, made a pit stop a little bit earlier, and he did not come in during this caution period, so he runs in second position. Let's go down to the pits again.
This is the tire that came off the right front of the Lifebuoy Chevrolet of Dave Marcus. You can see it's a little bit warm. Actually, it's very hot. Steam pouring off this tire. And you see inside, this is the inner liner. That's why Marcus was able to make another lap without losing a lap when he cut this tire down. He came into contact with Harry Gant. This tire shredded. You see what's left of the tire, outer casing here, the inner liner, the tire within the tire. That kept Marcus's car from careening into the wall. He was able to make a lap, come down pit road, change that right front tire, and go back out. This one will be thrown away, obviously.
Yeah, that thing has pretty much seen its better days. Now, there is Neil Bonnet, and this caution period came very poorly timed for Neil. He had just come in. He lost a lap by pitting too early, so Neil Bonnet goes a lap down on the field. Still under caution with 67 laps completed. Alan Kulwicki is going to be shown as the leader of the race, with Ken Schrader running in second, and Bobby Hillen Jr. is third. Well, ESPN, of course, very proud to present for you some NFL football action this season. We begin with preseason games, and our next one is tomorrow night, Sunday night, at 8 o'clock Eastern Time. We'll have live story. The green flag waves. Harold Kender throws it, and here we are back to full speed. And remember, Neil Bonnet there, the number 75 car, is a lap down, but he pulls ahead of the leader, Alan Kulwicki, and for the moment has gotten his lap back. Kulwicki is the leader, but Ken Schrader is looking good on the inside of the racetrack. The number 55 car of Bill Parsons is having more problems. He brought out our first caution of the evening when he spun coming off of corner number 4, the car not working right.
Kenny Schrader gets a good bite down on the inside of the racetrack. Most of the passing takes place on the outside. Usually you can protect yourself when you're down in the bottom, and rare is it that somebody gets underneath you unless their setup is significantly better. Now, it's difficult to say if Schrader is superior or Alan Kulwicki. His car is pushing a little bit, keeps him out of that inside lane.
And look at Bobby Hillen Jr., who is running well, trying to pull alongside Alan Kulwicki and challenge for that second spot, but for the moment he falls back in line, and it's a single file formation down the backstretch. The number 62 car of Steve Christman is running right behind Bobby Hillen Jr., but he is off the pace and a lap down. So Ken Schrader continues to lead, and the second place battle is between Alan Kulwicki and Bobby Hillen Jr.
Dave Marcus, apparently with suspension problem, has slowed and pulled behind the pit wall as we watch this action. Kenny Schrader, the leader of the race. Alan Kulwicki, there is third place Bobby Hillen, as Alan Kulwicki's in-car Hardee's race cam looks out the back window. Neil Bonnet continues to run about 10 car lengths ahead of this trio and is still the distance of the racetrack behind. Steve Chrisman is the 4th car in line behind the leader, Ken Schrader. You can just barely see Steve there, the big AC on the hood. He's doing a pretty good job at this junction of the race, one of his strongest efforts of this year.
And Terry Labonte, our early leader, is trying to make his way back up toward the front. Now racing alongside of Bobby Allison in corner number 2 down the backstretch. Labonte able to make the pass. Slower car in front of Bobby Allison. He has to get on the brakes and pull to the high side. That's the Brad T car, number 12.
Among the cars that were the early leaders of this race who fell back in the pack during the pit stops but are trying to work their way up through the field. Earnhardt is moving. Labonte, we just showed you, is moving. Rusty Wallace is moving, as is Jeff Bodine. So, yeah, those guys are still fast. They were just caught in traffic because of the pit stops.
All right, now throughout the evening, we're going to have the luxury of going to some statistics provided by Vassar Stats, and it's simply an indication of what happens during a pit stop. Voice-activated sports reporting, that's what Vassar stands for. And as we watch Terry Labonte, now here is the statistics for you in this Vassar Stats.
The first column represents the addition of the slowdown time the driver took from the time that he crossed the solid white line going into the pit area, added to his exit time. The second column is how much time the crew spent servicing, and there you see the total time for the pit stop. Driver total time, crew service time, and then total time. You can see Junior Johnson, Jeff Hammond, or Terry Labonte, they had the best total, just under 16 seconds.
And the worst pit stop was really by Dale Earnhardt, but Earnhardt makes up the time on the racetrack as he has already passed now Bobby Hillin Jr., and he moves into 3rd position. And there you can see where Dale is in relationship to Alan Kulwicki, who's carrying the Hardys in car. Well, Dave Marcus, as we indicated, dropping out of the race. Let's go to the pit area.
Well, Dave's still sitting in the Lifebuoy Chevrolet. Dave, what's the problem? Is there something wrong with the chassis in the front of the car?
Well, Jerry, I think Buddy Harrington blew a tire, went high, and came down across in front of Harry Gantz. Harry swung down to miss Buddy, and I got into Harry. Wasn't any really thing that I could do, but I guess that's just racing here at Bristol. It's a little discouraging because, you know, the Lifebuoy Chevrolet was running real well. We qualified well, and we thought we'd have a good shot at winning this race tonight.
Well, Dave Marcus out of it here at Bristol, but a good race up front.
As a matter of fact, Jerry, the number 3 car of Dale Earnhardt has passed Alan Kulwicki. Earnhardt moves to 2nd and now has about a half a straightaway to catch Ken Schrader, who is our leader.
In the last 8 races, by the way, Marcus has had 2/3, so he's not just whistling Dixie. He has been competitive the last 2 months.
And Dave Marcus had high hopes going into this race tonight, but he's losing a lot of laps as he sits in the pit area and waits for the repairs to be made. There's Terry Labonte continuing to move up, racing alongside Bobby Hillin Jr.
Yeah, Labonte is moving up. Hillin has been holding his own since his last yellow flag. Bobby Hillin has been running in the top 5. As we watch the two of them battle for position, 4 spot, I can't help but feel sorry for poor old Neil Bonnet. He's been driving his heart out, staying up there in front. This entire green flag segment. It's been about 15 laps as we continue to watch Labonte and Hillin, and he's not been able to get a caution. And now Schrader, it seems, as well as this duo right here, as well as Earnhardt, are moving in on Neil.
This is the battle for 5th. You saw how Labonte had to momentarily get off the accelerator and move around a slower car. Now some more contact. Bobby Hillin fighting that wheel. You can see him trying to keep that car from spinning. He did so. A nice job of driving.
We also saw an example of discretion being the better part of valor in the first half of any Bristol, Tennessee race. You saw Terry Labonte get out of the throttle significantly, let Bobby Hillin get himself straightened out, and then Terry went back to racing. A mark of a veteran race driver who knows how to run Bristol.
And here is also a very good battle as we have Rusty Wallace and Alan Kulwicki fighting for that 3rd spot. Now the lead is held by Ken Schrader, and Dale Earnhardt is in 2nd position. Wallace followed by Alan Alan Kulwicki, and then this battle between Bobby Hillin Jr. And here's a challenge for the lead down the backstretch off of turn 2. And once again, Dale Earnhardt moves into the lead, passing Ken Schrader. There is action all over the racetrack. Now there's Neil Bonnet right ahead of Dale Earnhardt. Remember, Neil has made up his lap right now, but he is about to lose it again. And we go back to this battle between Hillin and Terry Labonte.
This is for 5th, remember. Yeah, Bobby Hillin Jr. is hanging right in there. Terry Labonte, our pole setter. Brand new track record. He was like a 1/5 of a second quicker than everybody else. A 1/5 of a second, you say, what's the big deal? Let me tell you, from 1st to 30th here at Bristol, they were separated by just 1 second. 1/5 of a second is a much significantly quicker lap than anybody else when you have that much advantage on the field here at Bristol.
Well, when these guys trade paint out there, you can't really tell it because they have pretty much identical paint schemes, red and white. Hillin in the Miller American Buick, and of course Terry Labonte in the Budweiser Chevrolet. Inside of Bobby Hillin once again goes Terry Labonte, the early leader of the race. Once again, as they come out of the corner, it looks like they touch out there down the backstretch. Now Labonte perhaps has a shot at it, but no, Hillin is higher and faster at this point. You can see the work that Bobby Hillin is doing inside that car, trying to keep it straight.
Hillin's car seems to be handling extremely well. Labonte is just a tad quicker on the straightaways, but Hillin really is hooked up. He's running very smoothly in that high lane. He's only about a car width and a half away from the outside wall and really holding on for dear life.
And look who else is up there. Jeff Bodine in car number 5, who started second in the race. Now Bobby Hillin Jr. is still doing a fine job of holding off Terry Labonte for that 5th spot. But back there watching all of this is the blue and rather the yellow and white number 5 Levi Garrett Chevrolet of Jeff Bodine. Great racing here again, 5th, 6th, and 7th position. 96 laps have been completed. We are almost a 5th of the way through the race already. And the action continues hot and heavy. And we'll be back to resume coverage right after this. This race cam is made possible by the Hardee's Corporation. Hardee's, we're out to win you over. Right now, Alan Kulwicki, who carries our Hardee's race cam, is in 4th. Right behind him is the Miller American Buick of Bobby Hillin Jr. And there is Terry Labonte toward the inside. These cars have been running in this configuration for several laps now. Labonte trying his best to pass Bobby Hillin Jr. And there he finally does it. He moves into 5th.
Dennis, it's like been pulling teeth for Terry Labonte. He has felt that he's had the superior car for about the last 15 or 20 laps, but he just couldn't find the right combination to get around Hillin. He's finally done it. Now he looks to the inside of Alan Kulwicki. Terry Labonte sticking down on the bottom side, a little better apparently than Alan Kulwicki, but Alan Kulwicki has been a tough customer to pass all night, although Labonte makes easier work of Alan than he did of Bobby Hillin Jr. And by the way, Jeff Bodine has also now joined this group. That trio has become a quartet.
Yeah, but all this time that Terry Labonte has been trying to get around Bobby Hillin Jr. and the others, the first 3 have really taken off. The lead continues to be held by Dale Earnhardt, Rusty Wallace is second, then Ken Schrader, and then comes Terry Labonte, who has moved to 4th. Now Jeff Bodine begins to work on Bobby Hillin Jr. as we again watch from the Hardee's race cam carried by Alan Kulwicki.
Turn 2. Now this will happen very quickly, so pay attention to backstretch. You're only in it for about 4 seconds. Bang! You turn hard to the left and you slam down into 35-degree banking. Turn 3, turn 4, just like that. There goes Hillin Jr. on the inside of Kulwicki. You're off of the 4th turn. On the front stretch. Take one quick breath. Boom! Turn hard left and slam it into the banking once again. It happens so quickly here at Bristol, Tennessee. It's almost a mesmerizing effect, the drivers will tell you.
And Kulwicki is slowing very definitely. Drops to the low side of the racetrack. He's coming in for a pit stop. Alan Kulwicki brings it in. We watch the crew go to work on it. And it appears as if they're thinking about raising the hood. No, I guess not. They're just changing the tires on the right side of the car. But Alan Kulwicki finds himself going laps down. There's the gas man putting some fuel into the car. And Jerry Punch is right there.
Right front tire on Alan Kulwicki's E-Rex Ford. Apparently going down. It was losing air, and Kulwicki's car was getting looser and looser. That was definitely an unscheduled stop. They made a 2-tire change. He lost the lap, but he's down and away.
As a matter of fact, Jerry, he lost 2 laps while he was in the pit, so he has a lot of making up to do here. We have reached the 113 lap mark. And Dale Earnhardt continues to lead as we watch Alan Kulwicki try to pick up some speed and get back in the hunt. There's the leader, Dale Earnhardt. His lead over second place, Rusty Wallace, is about a half a straightaway.
Remember, you can pick those laps up here at Bristol. You don't even have to have an overwhelmingly superior car. There are normally so many yellow flags that if you strum them just right, you can work it to your advantage, and it's not all that difficult to pick up lost laps. But the interesting thing about tonight is we have not had those serious yellow flags that we are accustomed to seeing here at Bristol. It's been great racing.
It really has, and there's Dale Earnhardt passing Michael Waltrip on the third turn portion of this racetrack. We are live from Bristol International Raceway for the Busch 500 Winston Cup race. It's a Dale Earnhardt. Another caution at Bristol. Here's Bobby Hillin Jr. And look at the fireworks from Jeff Bodine's car. He was involved in that incident over in turn number 3 with Bobby Hillin Jr. And he'll have to bring that car in. A lot of sparks flying from underneath that Chevy.
Jeff has dropped that car right down on the ground. He continues out running on the inner liner trying to hold his position. He knows the yellow is going to be coming out. Bobby Hillin's car is incapacitated over there in the bottom of 3. We're probably in line for at least a 4 or 5 lap yellow flag. All the leaders are pitting as we're watching Bodine. Earnhardt is in. Here comes Harry Gant. Rusty Wallace, who made a pit stop under green, losing valuable time, and Dick Bergman will make the call in the pits.
Well, absolutely everything is going right for Dale Earnhardt tonight. Moments ago when Rusty Wallace had to pit, he did it under the green flag. Here's Earnhardt in for a 4-tire change under a yellow flag. They had the earlier problem with the air wrench. They got that fixed away. Everything is all set for Earnhardt. It's looking very good for him. Jerry?
Well, one driver who's not having things go his way is Jeff Bodine. He continues to be a target here in Bristol, Tennessee. The right front of the Levi Garrett Chevrolet has a lot of sheet metal damage. Gary Nelson and the crew trying to pry some of the sheet metal away. They move some tires away, trying to keep their driver from losing any more time on pit road. He's down and away, but he will be back in so they can do some more work on that right front side.
Okay, thank you, guys. Just to reemphasize something that Dick mentioned in his report down there, Rusty Wallace did come in for a stop before the caution, so he certainly did not make out well in that series. Here's a replay of the action up there in turn 3.
You see Hillin and Jeff Bodine were in that together. Bobby Hillin gets turned completely around. We did not see the beginning of it, but Jeff collided with Bobby when Bobby slowed in front of him, and both cars getting significant damage. We'll take a look at it from another angle, see if we can pick up exactly what happened. Well, this is after Jeff has come around. This is the other end of the racetrack after the collision, and you can see the tremendous display of fireworks, as you called it, Bob. But boy, Jeff really set that car down on the racetrack, and that damages a lot down there. Suspension, you got the towing you have to deal with, and there's a lot of problems.
So a lot of sheet metal damage, and while the crews are out there working on that very sharp sheet metal, they are protected with some very space-like gloves. More on that in this Quick Fact. Quick Facts are brought to you by New Quaker State with QSX. Keeps your engine cleaner to last longer.
We've all seen crew members dive inside the engine compartment and begin handling very hot parts during a race to try to make rapid repairs. Well, how do they keep from getting burned? Well, I'll show you. Now, what I'm wearing is called Kevlar. It's a Kevlar sleeve and a Kevlar glove. It's a heat-resistant, cut-resistant material that's used by NASA on the space shuttle. Let me show you what I mean. We'll take a razor blade knife here and show you. We just whip through a piece of paper very rapidly, slices it open pretty well, and hopefully this Kevlar glove, as I rip across the back of my hand and fingers here, I'm fine. No cuts, no problems. So a new substance for racing, for safety for the crew members, Kevlar, the sleeve and glove for hot work on pit road.
And Jeff Bodine's crew needed that as they tried to get that body work away from the tire. And there is the crew. Everybody is looking over the situation regarding their driver, Jeff Bodine. We're under our third caution period of the evening at Bristol. Cars in turn number 1 after having just received the green flag to go back to racing. There is Dale Earnhardt down the backstretch, trying to keep Rusty Wallace a lap down. Now, Rusty did lose a lap on an early stop. And so Earnhardt has put a lap on Rusty Wallace. Ken Schrader is running second. Bobby Allison is third. Fourth is Terry Labonte, and fifth is Ricky Rudd. Let's go to the pit area.
Well, Bobby Bobby Hillin is out of it here, Bristol. Bobby, what happened out there?
Well, Jerry, I think a head busted, you know, but that's racing. We were running good. The Miller American Buick was running good. Depends on TRW and Miller and Buick. They've been supporting us all year long. It's been a tough season, but we're going to come back and win the race.
Well, we're starting to see Bobby Hillin out. Let's go to Dick Burgers.
Well, Jerry, incredibly, one guy who is still in the race is Jeff Bodine. In fact, he hasn't even lost a lap. One of the reasons he's still able to compete beside the vicious hit he took is the way they built that car. There was just a literal ton of bracing in the front of that automobile. It is specifically constructed to be able to take tremendous amounts of use. Such is not the case with all of the cars here. For example, Labonte's 11, they say, we hope we don't get into a skirmish, because if we do, our car is very light.
Well, it certainly is a tribute to Gary Nelson and the crew for keeping him on the lead lap. He's made numerous visits to pit road, but they've always completed the work and gotten him back out there so that he did not lose a lap. Now there is Alan Kowicki ahead of Darrell Waltrip and Richard Petty. And all these cars are a lap down. At least Alan Kowicki is. Richard Petty is on the lead lap. And Darrell Waltrip is also. So Kowicki, the only one among this group that is not on the lead lap. There you can see Morgan Shepherd and Sterling Marlin behind.
Benny Parsons.
Okay, Benny Parsons. Look at the action out there. Here comes Richard Petty, like a shot out of a cannon. And here comes Benny Parsons behind Kowicki.
Trophy Dash type racing. Sterling Marlin is right there in that group. There you see Jeff Bodine, the miraculous Jeff Bodine, who Gary Nelson and the Levi Garrett crew have gotten out after a really serious-looking incident. He remains on the lead lap.
Benny Parsons, who joined us in the broadcast booth last night for our televised Busch Grand National race, doing duty on the racetrack himself tonight. And unofficially, we show him in 15th position, a lap down.
Alan Kowicki, who qualified well here tonight, has been slipping back as this race has worn on. The setup, the handle has gone away. In every Winston Cup race, the car changes dramatically as the race wears on. The track differs a little bit. The car, primarily because of stress, it makes changes. And the real key to winning a Winston Cup race is the ability to stay up with those changes. And the veteran crews like Junior Johnson and Richard Childress, that is the reason why they have so many successes in this type of racing. It's not so critical how fast you are on lap 10 or lap 25, but here at Bristol on lap 300, 400, 500.
Dale Earnhardt continues to lead down the backstretch, passing Brad Teague in the number 12 car. Now, we just came off a series of pit stops as a result of that caution flag, and here is our pit stop summary. Earnhardt went into the pits in the lead and came out in the lead. Wallace, of course, made that early stop and dropped all the way back to 11. Schrader moved from 3rd to 2nd, and Bobby Allison, who came in 8th position, moves all the way up to 4th. So Allison very definitely having a good pit stop on that. Now we go to the Vassar stats, and you can perhaps get an indication of why things happened the way they did.
You can see how consistent all the driver times were. Now, part of that is because everybody came in under a yellow flag, controlled conditions, and left under a yellow flag, controlled conditions. Everybody in at about 12 seconds, with the exception of Kenny Schrader, doing just a little quicker work. The pit crews, it's a leisure, it's a casual pace for them. There is not the requirement for the 9 or 10 seconds work. They can do it in 20 seconds because you don't lose any ground on the track. As we go back and look at Allison, Petty, and Darrell Waltrip, one driver who did not appear on those lists in our pit stop summary was Morgan Shepherd. Bob, he went in about 11th or 12th position, came out in 6th. Larry McReynolds and crew really getting him in and out in terrific fashion.
Here's some good competition among 3 cars. Bobby Allison, Richard Petty, and Darrell Waltrip. This is 5th, 6th, and 7th. Richard Petty to the low side of the racetrack, while Darrell stays up a little bit higher. And Bobby Allison is having a good showing. His teammate, Bobby Hillin Jr., just put on a terrific driving exhibition until he got involved in an incident over in turn number 3 that has put him out of the race. But his teammate, Bobby Allison, is doing a fine job also. And Darrell Waltrip is also having a very good run in that time machine.
3 veterans right there. Think of all the wins, all the laps, all the races among Bobby Allison, Richard Petty, and Darrell Waltrip. If there were ever 3 legends in any sport in American history, there are 3.
Waltrip trying to work on Richard Petty. Into the 35-degree banking. Waltrip trying to get his nose to the inside of Richard Petty, but not able to do so. Again, 5th, 6th, and 7th here at the end of 147 laps. Richard Petty has 3 wins on this racetrack. Bobby Allison has 4, and Darrell Waltrip 10. There's Bobby Allison. There is Richard Petty, and look at Darrell Waltrip now work the high side of the racetrack.
On your screen right now, Bob, is 354 Winston Cup wins. We're not talking about entries here. We're not talking about leading laps. We're talking about 354 wins. Bobby Allison is right now at 83 and counting. Darrell Waltrip at 70 and counting. And Richard Petty at 201 and waiting breathlessly for 202.
Now Petty begins to challenge Bobby Allison for 200, waiting for 201 is what I want to say here. Good 3-car racing using both the high and low groove. We've had a change. We've had a change in second position as Ken Schrader is in second, and Terry Labonte now going to third.
And Schrader's slowing, Bob. Schrader's dipped below the apron on the backstretch. There he is, looking for his pit. Coming pitward here in the front stretch. Kenny Schrader, an on-schedule pit stop, and our Jerry Punch is there. Jerry.
Well, Kenny Schrader was coming down pit road. Now he has stopped. I guess he was going to bring the car behind the wall in a tough break for the Red Baron Pizza Ford. Now NASCAR officials are there talking to Schrader. The car apparently has stalled. And Darrell Waltrip making a move inside Richard Petty.
They are wheel to wheel and door to door out there in turn 1, and Darrell Waltrip picks up that 5th spot over Richard Petty.
Kenny Schrader is back out on the track after consultation with some pit crew members. They appear to be from Dave Marcus's crew, and Kenny is back up to speed. A very unusual stop.
I do not know what happened.
Apparently something was wrong inside the cockpit. Maybe the belt came loose on Kenny Schrader, or a helmet strap came off. Something apparently not wrong with the car, but has to do with driver safety or driver comfort.
In any case, Schrader is back out there as we watch now Kyle Petty beginning to join this battle between himself and Richard Petty. And, of course, Darrell Waltrip is also right there. Let's go down for more on this Ken Schrader story.
One of the most unusual things that can happen to a driver on any track, Kenny Schrader's seatbelt came unbuckled. He started rattling around inside the car. It's all he could do to hang on to the steering wheel and keep from being thrown out of the seat. He came down pit road, set the car still for just a second, buckled the seatbelt back, and off he went.
Well, it gives you an idea of how much punishment these guys are under out there on the racetrack. To have a seatbelt come loose is just unheard of.
Well, on a high bank racetrack, the G-forces are well above the normal, which is 1, and up in the vicinity of 2 or 3, depending upon the situation and how hard you are slamming. I used that verb earlier, into the corner. But it is significantly different. If you can imagine what it's like taking an off-ramp on a freeway, multiply that by about 3 times, because the degree of banking here is 35 degrees, and you go into it at 150 miles an hour.
We're watching 4th, 5th, and 6th here. Bobby Allison trailing is Darrell Waltrip, and right behind Darrell is Richard Petty. Again, 4th, 5th, and 6th as they lap some of the slower traffic.
We talked about car setup earlier as we continue to watch Bobby and Darrell and Richard. Richard's son, Kyle, as Morgan Shepherd is I was going to comment that is smoking heavily. It has been tire smoke for the first 150 laps of this race, but this appears more serious, doesn't it, Jerry?
It indeed is more serious, Larry. They have an overheating problem. The engine is really showing a lot of temperature. As you're seeing Leonard Wood now, one of the famous Wood Brothers team, putting water in the Cisco Ford. They are trying to decipher what the problem may be. And car number 22, Bobby Allison and Darrell Waltrip heated up on the racetrack.
As a matter of fact, Darrell got around Bobby Allison, so Darrell moves to 4th. And now Richard Petty is about to pass Bobby Allison, or at least would like to. So we saw Morgan Shepherd low on the racetrack, and also Kyle Petty came in, and here is Richard Petty passing Bobby Allison. Well, not quite. Allison will have nothing of it now. Richard gets cleanly on Bobby Allison and moves to 5th.
You know, we talked so many times about putting yourself in a position to win, and you're looking at two of the most cagey veterans, Richard Petty and Bobby Allison. They're not spectacular in terms of the leader like this man right here, Dale Earnhardt is, but they have put themselves in a position to win. Alan Kulwicki goes another lap down. Also, Bill Elliott just won a second lap down.
162 laps out of 500 complete here at Bristol International Raceway. The leader is Dale Earnhardt. Second would be the number 11 car of Terry Labonte, and then Ricky Rudd. Bristol International Raceway, and Dale Earnhardt continues to lead, but there is action all over this racetrack. Now, we have what we call spotters that are assigned to each camera to try to keep up with the action that you watch, and our chief spotter is Dan Laycock. He is doing yeoman service, trying to follow all the battles that are going on out there.
Earnhardt continues to lead, and by the way, while we've been watching all of this action all around the racetrack, Earnhardt, not quietly either, but has put one half a lap between himself and second running Terry Labonte.
Here is Neil Bonnet on the inside of the racetrack and Richard Petty on the high side. Now, Neil, remember, lost a lap and has not gained it back, and Richard Petty is the 5th position at this point. We'll give you the rundown as best we have it. It is Earnhardt, followed by Labonte, then Ricky Rudd, then Darrell Waltrip, and Richard Petty. 6th is Bobby Allison. 7th is Jeff Bodine. Those are the only 7 cars on the lead lap. And 8th is Rusty Wallace, a lap down. 9th position belongs to Rick Wilson. And 10th is Neil Bonnet. 11th is Benny Parsons. 12th is Sterling Marlin. 13th is the 7 car of Alan Kulwicki as Jeff Bodine comes in for another pit stop.
Oh, that's a real tough break. Jeff and Gary Nelson have certainly had their share of them this year, but they worked so hard keeping that car on the lead lap after that crash with Dave Marcus, and now he has to come in and pit under green. It looked like a tire was going down on the outside. Jeff Bodine then returns to the fray, gets back up in the banking, tries to work up to the gears and work back up to the 130, 140 mile an hour speed vicinity as quickly as possible.
Well, it has not been a very good racetrack for Jeff Bodine in the past couple of years. Meanwhile, the track has been very good to Dale Earnhardt. He is continuing to lead here with 174 laps about to be completed. We have had a total of 6 leaders and 5 leaders and 6 lead changes.
Dale Earnhardt, who has won 3 of the last 5 Bristol races, recall, is also undefeated on the short tracks this year. Don't want to drive that into the ground, but it's a very significant point how much Kirk Shelmerdine, Richard Childress, Randy Dorton, and everybody have done their homework this year. That car has been absolutely the king. We call Richard Petty the king, but the King Royale of 1987 in Winston Cup has been the Wrangler Jeans blue and yellow Chevy of Dale Earnhardt.
Well, despite the fact that these guys are 2 laps off the pace, they're still going at it with each other. That's Bill Elliott running behind Alan Kulwicki. We're showing them 13th and 14th, both 2 laps down. Of course, Bill lost a lap early with a pit stop, but it is very easy to make up a lap at this racetrack.
Remember, it's just 17 seconds around, or roughly that. Qualifying speed for most people was in that bracket. Terry Labonte's time was 16.5 seconds at an average speed of 115. And the 30th qualifier, Rodney Combs, qualified at 17.5. So almost exactly 1 second from top to the bottom.
There is Dale Earnhardt about to lap the 6th place car of Bobby Allison. He does so with ease, and at this point, Dale Earnhardt is making a shambles of this race. Only 5 cars now are on the lead lap. The next one that will go a lap down to the field is Richard Petty, and there again is about a half a straightaway difference between Petty and Earnhardt.
And Earnhardt has also stretched his advantage over the second running Terry Labonte to 10 seconds there. Dale's first Winston Cup career win came here at Bristol in 1979. Lots of wins ago.
The laps continue to click off very quickly. We're already up to 180 laps as Kirk Shelmerdine watches his driver Dale Earnhardt leading. This is our 4th of the evening. Ken Schrader got up high on turn number 2, bumped the wall. The car is now stopped in the middle of the backstretch, and the record is there. You can see Ken walking to the ambulance.
Bob, you made the comment during break. think of the significance of Kenny Schrader pulling into pit lane, taking the time to cinch that shoulder harness and seatbelt back up. Made a big difference, didn't it?
Could very well have been the difference between injury and no injury as they're trying to get Schrader's car off of the racetrack.
You might ask now, how does that happen? Is that a driver error? No, the seatbelt coming loose, that can happen. It's very rare, but particularly at a place here at Bristol where there are so many forces pulling against your body. And the trick is to let the belt hold you in. Don't fight the centrifugal forces that are attempting to throw you out of the car. You cinch those belts up and lean on that. You basically sit in your belts and the seat just kind of guides you. So it's not a driver error that the belts come loose.
A lot of debris was scattered in turn number 2. It'll be a while before they get everything cleaned up. In the meantime, we can present this little piece that we put together. A lot of crews and the drivers came here to Bristol a little bit earlier than they normally do to take part in a golf tournament. A lot of fun, but it was for a very, very good cause. Drivers, crew members, and media personalities gathered at the Tri-City Country Club to have some fun while playing a round of golf and to help defray medical costs of Jesse Sykes. Now, not often do you see race cars on display at a golf outing. Jesse Sykes was the driver of the Curve Motorsports hauler, but was injured in a highway accident in May, but this benefit raised over $10,000.
I just don't know. It's hard to believe this many people were turning out. I really appreciate it.
Among the attendees, Rick Wilson getting in some autograph time. And so did the driver of the Citgo Ford, Kyle Petty. And here's Neil Bonnet. Now notice he's autographing an ESPN hat.
Thanks, Neil.
Davey Allison, whose swing looks very much like that of Bob Jenkins, gets off a tremendous drive, 16 inches.
Maybe on an off weekend I'll pick up my PGA card or something and be able to start doing this full time.
Right. Jeff Bodine has figured out how to sink putts with ease, and he's trying to convince younger players that his pool style is the way to go.
Get it. Okay? You listen to me, you go a long way.
Younger brother Brett will have to be told the object of the game is to get the ball to the green and not take 14 shots to do it. So here comes Jeff, still trying to sell his unique style. Remember, Brett, when you finally do reach the green, don't use the flat end, use the small end. Here's Ricky Rudd. Not a bad style.
No, I don't think you have to worry about me going pro unless unless you want to get me out here doing the landscape and digging up and planting grass seeds or something.
I think we'd all agree with that. Ned Jarrett amused the crowd more with his legs than his golfing. Obviously, a late gust of wind carried the ball a little to the right of the hole. But watch this. Good style and grip. Harry Gant. He makes it. Very nice. Harry's team won the competition, by the way. And little Chichi Rodriguez demonstration there. Now here's Jeff again, this time with an opportunity to try that unorthodox style. I'll bet he misses it. No, it works! Bodine becomes a trendsetter in golf. If his attitude toward TV cameramen were just a little better.
I said no picture. What do you think? You're a picture.
I don't think that Bobby Rahal has anything to worry about. I guess he's the best golfer. We have proven one thing, though. There is a reason why these guys drive race cars and don't play golf.
That's right. A lot of other drivers contributed to that golf outing, and also some auctioning off of hats and stuff, and it all goes to Sykes.
A great consistency of the top 5 cars. You can see the first 5 cars went into the pits, running in the first 5 positions, and they come out in the first 5. The only change, Waltrip and Petty. Great consistency among the crews. That's something that the yellow flags will afford you the opportunity to do.
And now we go to the Vassar stats once again. Again, the column under driver indicates how long it takes a driver to slow down, then get back up to speed. The crew indicates the time that it takes the crew to actually do the work in the pits.
We're looking most seriously here at Bobby Allison, who took a grand total total of almost 43 seconds, 42.64, getting in and out. They spent a lot of extra time on that car. Bobby came in very slowly, by the way. He was displeased, I believe, with NASCAR. He thought he had perhaps gotten his lap back, and they didn't think so, and made him go behind the pace car. Jerry?
Well, Kenny Schrader has climbed out of the Red Baron's Pizza Ford, and Kenny, a pretty hard lick over there. What happened?
Well, I don't really know. We dropped down in the first turn, and something just let go. I don't know if we ran over something and cut a tire. I didn't hear a tire pop, which usually you do when you cut a tire, but we had stopped about 20 laps before because my seatbelts had come undone, and I'm sure glad I stopped.
You really had the car hooked up out there. You're up in the Winston Cup points. Are you going to be able to fix it and get back out and try to get some points?
Well, they're going to take a look at it now, and if they can get it back together, they'll send us back out because we're only 200 laps into this race, and this place is tough on cars, so we can pick up 10, 12, maybe 15 spots by going back out.
Well, it may not be over yet for Kenny Schrader.
And as we get set to go green, we'd like to remind you once again that tomorrow night at 8 o'clock Eastern Time, live on ESPN, the Los Angeles Rams against the San Diego Chargers, NFL preseason football. We would like to mention Phil Barkthal, who was another contributor to the Jesse Sykes Fund. And now the alignment in turn number 4 as we're ready for a restart. It is Dale Earnhardt on the high side, Rusty Wallace low, Rusty a lap down, trying to get it back, and he takes it.
He's going to give it all he's got, Bob, I guarantee you.
He was sideways there in the second corner, but Dale now passes him cleanly, and Rusty is a lap down. Locking place is Terry Labonte.
Watch Allison, too. He's got cars right now. He could give us some fireworks of his own next few laps.
Bobby Allison is 7th, a lap down. Look at Rusty. Still that car is about to get out from under him. Jeff Bodine is also trying to move up. He is 2 laps down. But he is racing right alongside Bobby Allison and Ricky Rudd. Bobby Allison is a lap down in 7th position. We have in 3rd Ricky Rudd, 4th is Richard Petty, and 5th is Darrell Waltrip. Those 5 cars on the lead lap. Here comes Rick Wilson.
I'll tell you, it's amazing. Allison right now, we mentioned he's driving because he's got a cause. You know Rusty Wallace is going hard. He's trying to get his lap back. Labonte is trying to show Earnhardt that Earnhardt has something to worry about. They're all driving their hearts out. Earnhardt is out there seemingly cruising. He's not hanging the car out. This is not the typical Dale Earnhardt ride on a short track, but he doesn't have to. The car is that good.
As we mentioned in the very beginning of the show, there will not be a car that does not have some kind of body damage, and there is some damage showing up right now to Terry Labonte's car on the left front. He was our pole sitter and the early leader of the race. Now Richard Petty and Darrell Waltrip are going at it for position here for 4th. Richard Petty in 4th. Darrell Waltrip in the Tide machine number 17 is 5th. Jeff Bodine on the low side of the racetrack is 2 laps down.
Yellow flags, frequent yellow flags, at least one inside of each 100-lap segment. That's been no problem up till now. It's really critical to Richard Petty. Richard Petty is not in the years of his life that gives him as much physical fitness as it does a Darrell Waltrip or certainly a Jeff Bodine or a Terry Labonte. And these races, particularly a place like Bristol, which is very demanding, very taxing physically on the driver, Richard has to pace himself. And the yellow flags are very important for him to stay on the lead lap and to stay up there and be one of those candidates to win.
Richard Petty with a very strong showing here. Passing Bobby Allison. Now here comes Darrell Waltrip, who once again is on the lead lap along with Richard Petty. That car of Waltrip skating high in turn number 2, coming off it with a spark activity from underneath it.
Bob, on that shot going down the backstretch, take note as we watch Harry Gant, Bill Elliott, the 44 car, Sterling Marlin, of all the people now, the shot coming up is on the backstretch, everybody. The stands are just teeming with people. The people have really turned out to Larry Carrier's Bristol Raceway this week. We've got a note here that the official paid attendance, thank you Ted Jones, is over 48,000 people. And I'll just bet you there are, 200-300 more that snuck in somewhere because they are everywhere here. It's a very enthusiastic crowd. We referred to that in the open, and this is quite a spectacle under the lights here in Bristol, Tennessee. It's a most enjoyable place to be if you're coming somewhere to watch a motor race.
And Darrell Waltrip continues to move up. He has passed Richard Petty, and Darrell Waltrip goes into 4th position. Darrell Waltrip is certainly in the thick of things, but at the moment, Dale Earnhardt is pretty much running away with the race as we watch Waltrip out there with Richard Petty will tell you that Benny Parsons has pulled behind the pit wall in car number 35. Well, this race is very demanding. It's a very long race. 500 laps on a half-mile racetrack with laps about 16 or 17 seconds. We talked to Darrell about fatigue out there.
Well, the biggest thing is, as long as you're under green, it doesn't really bother you that much. I mean, you feel it, you're aware of it, but you're so preoccupied that the heat and how tired you are doesn't really bother you. Then all of a sudden you get a caution, you come in, you get a nice cold drink of water, you get a cold towel, you dump a little water down your back and you say, oh man, I am worn out. And you're not halfway yet. That's what really takes it out of you. But you got to have the cautions to make it. If this race went green flag, 500 laps, I know there's a lot of good men in here. I think I'm one of them. But 500 green flag laps here without a caution, I don't think there'll be a driver in the field that can make it.
Well, it's only happened once in the history of Winston Cup racing at Bristol. Back in March of 1985, they had the most caution flags, 15, but in 1971, a race that Charlie Glotzback won here, the entire distance was run without a caution flag. And that seems like it's just absolutely impossible in today's...
Well, that record won't be beat tonight, will it?
You're right. We've already had 4 caution periods, but on the other hand, we've had a lot of green laps. And Dale Earnhardt is the leader of the race. Back at Bristol, Rusty Wallace has made up his lap. He was able to catch and pass Dale Earnhardt. He was only 1 lap down, so now there are 6 cars on the lead lap. And should we get a yellow here in the next few moments, Rusty would be able to encircle the entire racetrack and certainly be in a challenging position because he passed Dale Earnhardt with relative ease. Now, of course, Dale may just know that Rusty is a lap down and he's letting him go.
No.
I don't know.
I really doubt that because Dale recognizes, Bob, that Rusty is probably the single biggest threat to Dale in winning this race. Rusty and Dale are 2 of the people that everybody was talking about the 3 days that we've been here as the people to beat here tonight at Bristol. And remember that Rusty did not lose his lap because something went wrong with the car or because of a mistake. He pitted under green and Dale was able to pit under yellow.
I don't know. Terry Labonte is catching Earnhardt also, so I'm not sure that Dale is doing his best right now, whether it be because of himself or because of his car not working right. Well, let's go to the pit area and find out what happened to Benny Parsons.
Well, it's true. Our colleague is out of it here at Bristol. And Benny, what happened? What put you out?
I don't know, Jerry. Something happened to the engine. Last week in Michigan, we had a very similar problem. That time it was a valve.
Can anybody handle Earnhardt? He looks awfully stout out there.
It don't look like it. I tell you what, he is going, isn't he?
He's going to be awfully tough. Benny Parsons out over here at Bristol.
All right, as Morgan Shepherd drops low on the racetrack there in turn number 2, we'll try to give you an idea of how much of a lead Dale Earnhardt has at the moment. And really, you can see there he is. Actually, that's Rusty Wallace. There is Dale Earnhardt, and behind him is Terry Labonte, and Labonte is definitely catching him. He's closing in.
Incidentally, Benny has won here at Bristol. It's an interesting story. He won here in 1973. That's the year of his Winston Cup championship.
We'll try to get an exact interval for you as Dale crosses the starting line. We will get the clock going, and there it stops. It's only 1.4 seconds. We'll do it next lap to see if indeed Labonte is reeling him in.
1.4 seconds at Bristol. That's about 1 gas going into the first turn.
Okay, here he comes again off of turn number 4 now. Start. Stop. Look at that. He made up almost a half second or over a half second.
Tire stagger. That's normally a big factor in everybody's setup during the race. They will begin the race with maybe 3/4 of an inch of tire stagger. It doesn't seem like enough when you're talking about the circumference of a tire, which is 89 or maybe 90 inches around. It's really 1/2 of 1%. But on a 3,500-pound Winston Cup stock car, it makes a big difference. Tire stagger changes during the running of the race. When you first put the tires on, you know where they start, where the tires will grow, and that little difference, normally in the vicinity of just 1/4 of an inch, will dramatically affect the performance of the machine.
Terry Labonte goes into this race third in the point standings. Of course, the leader is that man, Dale Earnhardt. There you You can see the gap between the two. Now, there are a couple of slower cars between them. Now, there is Neil Bonnet, and the report is that Neil may not be feeling well, and there could be a driver change. Let's go to Jerry Punch.
Well, the problem with Neil Bonnet, there are some fumes getting up in the driver's compartment of the car. Now, those fumes are carbon monoxide. What happens is first, you get sick from your stomach, you get nauseated. Then you get lightheaded and dizzy, and finally, you just go to sleep. So they've got Kenny Schrader standing by in the Valvoline pit. The next time they get a chance, or as soon as they can, they're going to bring Neil Bonnet in and get him out of the race car.
All right, so we'll watch for that situation to develop at our next caution period. We're on lap 227, so we're not all that far away from the halfway point of this 500 lapper.
We might mention, Bob, that it's a pretty pleasant night here in the mountains of eastern Tennessee. It was 90 degrees during the day, but the temperature dropped down nicely here to the 80s and then the mid-70s as we approached race time. And we're inside an enclosed booth right now. We don't get all the effect of the weather, but I see a lot of people sitting out there in shirt sleeves, some with hats, and they all look very comfortable. And as those people are comfortable, Dick Bergman right now is settled in with Kyle Petty.
Well, Kyle, first there was a lot of smoke, and then there was more smoke, and now here you are. Did you lose the motor?
I guess the motor went. First, the water temperature went real high. We came in, took the screen out, went back out and run a while, and we're pretty good. And then the oil temperature, it pegged the oil temperature, and it just melted everything in the motor.
It's really hot here in pit road. What's it like inside the car? Is it physical?
It's not really that bad. The temperature inside the car is not bad. There's a lot of beating and banging going on because you got 30 cars out here that basically run the same speed. And if your car's really not driving good, sometimes you got to lean on somebody to get around them.
Well, Bob, a good third of the cars are beat up so far. It is a physical race for sure.
Ken Schrader waits on pit road with helmet on, waiting to do a relief driving effort for Neil Bonnet. We'll be right back to Bristol International Race. Larry Newbert, Dick Bergman, and Dr. Jerry Punch. This is Bob Jenkins welcoming you to an evening of Winston Cup auto racing here on ESPN. We're live at Bristol International Raceway, and we're only about 14 laps from the halfway point of this 500 lapper at Bristol International Raceway. There is Terry Labonte in car number 11, the Junior Johnson Budweiser Chevrolet. He is running second. The leader is Dale Earnhardt. Ricky Rudd is third, Darrell Waltrip fourth, Richard Petty is fifth, and Rusty Wallace is sixth. Those cars on the lead lap. A lap down in seventh is Rick Wilson. Eighth is Bobby Allison, also a lap down. 2 laps down in ninth is Jeff Bodine. 10th is Sterling Marlin. 11th is Neil Bonnet, and he'll be relieved by Ken Schrader at the next opportunity. In 12th position, also 2 laps down, is Harry Gant. In 13th place is Bill Elliott, and in 14th, 3 laps down, is Alan Kulwicki.
First and second place drivers are among the 7 that started tonight's race that have previous wins at Bristol. In addition to the 2 of them, Waltrip, of course, has won here. Bobby Allison, Richard Petty, Rusty Wallace, and Benny Parsons. Benny is already out of the race. So 7 previous winners in tonight's field. By the way, there were 4 cars that entered here this weekend which did not qualify. From Australia, the very enjoyable Tony Spanos. Mike Joy told me earlier they're going to start calling him Boomerang because he keeps going down to Australia and coming back. You understand? Yeah, I guess I understand that. Troy Beebe tried to qualify DK Ulrich's car. Mike Potter from nearby Johnson City and J.D. McDuffie was among the non-qualified cars. 16 of the 30 starters tonight began this race with Winston Cup victories. You can see the victory list, the career victory list, number of drivers is building every year.
In 7th and 8th positions are Rick Wilson, who is making his first short track start of the season, and Bobby Allison, the old veteran of short tracks and super speedways and just about everything that's thrown in front of him. 7th and 8th here, Bobby on the high side of the racetrack.
Now for Rick Wilson in that yellow Kodak number 4, this is a rare appearance. He has not been on a short track, I don't think, at all this year. He has not entered one race. This is only the 5th one of the season. So this is a learning experience for Rick. They are building this team with a hope that perhaps in 1988 or at least in 1989 they will become a championship contender. Rick has proved himself time and again on the the ultra-fast speedways. And as I mentioned, they're trying to do their homework at a place like Bristol here and perhaps be one of the top 10 cars in a year or 2.
Again, these guys are a lap down to the leaders, but they are in 7th and 8th position. Well, we anticipate some pit stops in a few moments. There you can see the Junior Johnson team awaiting Terry Labonte to come in. And with some information on pit stops, here is an ESPN
Cup races for pit stops on pit road. We've all seen crew members pick up a jack and dash around the car to make a 4-tire change. But there's been a lot of technology over the years, and let's show you what we mean. To my right is a 2-ton floor jack. It'll lift 2 tons off the ground, and you got to be about 2 tons to lift it. It weighs about 90 pounds, and you really have to be Arnold Schwarzenegger to pick this thing up, and you're not going to dash around the car more than once or twice without having possible surgical intervention. Now this jack, a BSR Products aluminum alloy jack. It weighs maybe 35 pounds, fairly light little guy, tapered in the front end so it'll slide beneath the car very easily. But the biggest advantage of this racing jack, we'll show you. Chris Francis, step in here and help me pump these jacks, and we'll show the folks what we're talking about. Ready? 1, 2, 3, 4 pumps. The racing jack is 6 inches off the ground. That jack a mere 3 inches off the ground. So you keep pumping and pumping and pumping with an old-timey jack to get the car up enough to change tires. A lighter, more effective, and more efficient way to change tires with the new racing jack.
Darrell Waltrip is going to need a jack because he has scraped the wall coming out of turn number 4. The yellow comes out, and Rusty Wallace has made up his lap. So Rusty Wallace will now be able to encircle the entire field, and Darrell is limping toward the pit area. An unfortunate break for Darrell, who was running so strong here. He was in 4th when the incident occurred.
Boy, he was in it very much so, Bob. Waltrip going very slowly around the racetrack. We'll be watching for Neil Bonnet perhaps to duck in. He is now below the broken white line through 3 and 4, creeping around the bottom. Let's see if he gets out and Kenny gets in. Kenny looks well suited up. I'm pretty sure that he's going to get in. Jerry Punch is there.
Well, Neil Bonnet brings the Valvoline Pontiac to a halt. He is not looking well at all in the car. They have the window netting down. Dale Earnhardt is on pit road. Most of the leaders in the pits, but we are watching him try to lift Neil Bonnet out of the car. He has the driving suit unzipped. He is leaning on the pit wall, trying to get some wash to clean his eyes out. Obviously, he is suffering from the effect of the fumes. Dale Earnhardt getting left side rubber in the Wrangler Chevrolet as they are down making pit stop down toward Dick Berger. Dick?
The most interesting pit stops was Terry Labonte, where they turned the water hose on his feet to try to cool him off. All 5 of the top 5 runners are right here, and the only one that we haven't seen so far is Darrell Waltrip. Waltrip's not here yet. Jerry, what's going on at your end?
Well, they are irrigating out Neil Bonnet's eyes. You know, there's a lot of debris inside the car, but one thing important, when you get those fumes in the car, the eyes will get inflamed, and they will begin to swell. Then you can't see. Everything looks blurry. It's bad enough here to race at night when you're not accustomed to night racing at these speeds, but when your eyes begin to swell and get blurry, it makes it even tougher. Neil was sick, and he is now out of the race car. And a couple of cars having trouble. Darrell Waltrip having his problems as Neil Bonnet now has climbed down to the Valvoline car.
Now, Darrell Waltrip's car has a couple of flat tires on the right side, and they are positioned at the exit to the pit area down there in front of us. They're trying to get the car behind the wall so that they can do some work on it, but it's not moving real well.
Talk about the invincibility of Dale Earnhardt in 1987. Darrell Waltrip was once Mr. Invincible in the short tracks, but this year in the 4 previous races at 12th, 20th, 21st, and it doesn't look any better tonight.
Well, during these pit stops, Dale Earnhardt remained in the lead, and Terry Labonte in 2nd, Ricky Rudd 3rd. We'll be right. We're past the halfway point at Bristol International Raceway, and we are under caution for the 5th time this evening. The field is getting ready for a restart, but in the first half of this race, we've had some excellent activity. Dale Earnhardt has pretty much been the leader all through the race, but there has been some great racing back in the pack. On lap number 34, we had our first caution period of the evening as Phil Parsons slid down the main straightaway. Several scrambled, including Derek Cope, made it through okay. But here comes Jimmy Means spinning off of turn number 4 and also getting involved in this crash that brought out the first caution on lap number 34. Bobby Hillin Jr. was having a great race, running in the top 5, but it all ended in this incident in turn number 3. The car damaged too badly to continue. Jeff Bodine was also involved. Richard Petty, you saw there, sneaked along the high side of the racetrack and made it through okay. Ken Schrader made an unusual stop to fasten his seatbelt that had come undone, and it was a good thing he did because his car scraped the wall and stopped on the backstretch at lap number 183. And then our most recent caution period was because of this incident involving Darrell Waltrip as he got up into the retaining wall in turn number 4. Our Napa mid-race recap indicates that the leader of the race at that time and now was Dale Earnhardt. He's led 166 of the 250 laps, and his margin over Terry Labonte is about 1 second. There are 6 cars on the lead lap. We have had 6 leaders and 8 lead changes. 4 caution periods for a total of 26 laps. Out of the race, Ronnie Thomas, Bobby Hillin Jr., Kyle Petty, and Benny Parsons. Ken Schrader and Darrell Waltrip, the most recent to drop out of this race. We go to the pit area.
Well, Neil Bonnet has climbed out of the Valvoline Pontiac, and after a little bit of washing and a little medical work, we can talk to Neil. Neil, what happened to you out there?
Well, evidently there was carbon monoxide. I had a vent coming in the car. I got to where I couldn't even see, and as you were telling me, my eyes, I couldn't even see where I was going. And one day I got tired, I just physically couldn't see where I was at.
Well, we had to take our gear off here and do a little bit of irrigation for Neil Bonnet's eyes, but another driver having problems. Dick Bergeron's up in the Darrell Waltrip pit area.
And Darrell Waltrip is in here wiping his face. He's just taken oxygen. He took a tough lick when he came into the pit area. He couldn't steer the car at all. We'll see if we can talk to him. Darrell, what happened?
I blew a right front tire.
Blew a right front tire, hit the wall. They're going to try to straighten it out here and get him back in if they can. Waltrip very unhappy behind pit wall.
It is a grueling Saturday night race at Bristol, Tennessee.
Bob, I think we saw a more depressed Darrell Waltrip than usual. I think he really felt he had an excellent chance to win this race. When Darrell was in his prime, this was one of his specialties. This racetrack, even this night race, I bet he felt very confident until that moment. He must be crushed.
It would be nice to see Darrell Waltrip have a good finish in this 1987 season. It was the so-called dream team at the beginning of the year with Waddell Wilson and Rick Hendrick and Darrell Waltrip, but things just haven't worked out quite the way they wanted it to. We'll be right back. International Raceway, we're at lap 272 of the 500-lap Busch 500. Rusty Wallace is in 4th position. He made up the lap, and he has recently passed both Ricky Rudd there, number 15, and Richard Petty. And now Petty begins to challenge Ricky Rudd.
Rusty Wallace has been the fastest car on the racetrack for the last 25 laps. There is Richard Petty moving underneath Ricky Rudd. They both have just been passed by Rusty Wallace. Remember that Rusty made up that lap under the green flag conditions. And right now, Rusty Wallace is the man of the hour of this race. And by the way, we have passed the lap 250 mark. Remember, we were yellow at like 252, 253. Now, theoretically, and underscore the word theoretically, a lot of people might be able to stretch it and go the distance without stopping again. Now, remember what we said at the top of the show. We figure there'll be a couple of more caution flags, so everybody probably will stop one more. But if we go the rest of this race under green, a lot of people are going to be stretching it. A couple of people in those top 5 or 6 positions that are on the lead lap, they're going to make it. It could be very dramatic if we go the rest of the way green, but we don't anticipate that.
Richard Petty is in 4th in car number 73. Rusty Wallace is in 3rd. And Richard Petty is having another very fine performance, and he's done so many times this year on the Winston Cup Trail. There is Rusty Wallace, who has moved into 3rd position. The only 2 other cars ahead of him are Terry Labonte and Dale Earnhardt. Rusty, the winner of Watkins Glen, Budweiser at the Glen a couple of weeks ago on the road course.
Rusty Wallace is about 5.5 seconds behind Dale Earnhardt right now. And off of a handheld stopwatch, we'll see if the difference shrinks every single lap out. Stayed about the same that time. It's about 5.5 seconds. Whoa, and there's Derek Koch looking in the mirrors as he came off of the 35-degree banking, trying to stay out of Dale Waltrip or Dale Earnhardt's way, and he almost committed a miscue.
That was Dale Earnhardt passing Derek Koch, and here comes Terry Labonte, but it seems like Labonte can pull within about 1.5 seconds, and he can't get any closer, so it's a pretty good indication that these cars are equally matched, and since Earnhardt has the lead, that's where he stays. As you can see, his average finishing position in Winston Cup competition since March the 1st 4.6. That's quite an average.
It really is. And listen to some of the details. His 8th at Watkins Glen was his 3rd worst finish of the season. Only twice has he finished out of the top 8.
There's the interval, about a straightaway advantage for Earnhardt. And here there is Rusty Wallace, and he is 3rd. So this is there's not too much racetrack between 1st and 3rd.
And Rusty has a relatively clean racetrack ahead of him. Remember, we told you that the difference was about 5.5. We're going to check it on the official electric eye here and see what it turns out to be. We're timing 3rd running Rusty Wallace vis-a-vis the leader.
Yep, about 5.3 seconds for Rusty Wallace. And we'll do it once again to see if there is any change from lap to lap. Earnhardt crosses the stripe again. There's Terry Labonte crossing the line. Buddy Arrington, and now here comes Rusty. And it's about the same. Maybe he lost a fraction of a second.
Waltrip was in traffic, too. He was passing Dave Marcus and Derek Koch, so he had to spend a little extra time. And we got Morgan Shepherd along the wall here in the front stretch.
And Morgan Shepherd scrapes along the front stretch wall. It's going to bring out another caution on lap 286. That's our 6th of the evening.
Well, this is interesting now. Will everybody come in or not? I would imagine that most of the crews figure like we did, that there'll be at least one more caution flag after this, perhaps 2 more. I suspect everybody will duck in, and whatever service that they want to complete will take place. They'll top off the fuel tanks. Some drivers will elect to make tire changes. Dick Bergman's in the pits, and he's going to report on what's going on.
And it's probably going to be just like all the other Earnhardt pits have been under yellow flag tonight, with 4 tires. Outside first, then the inside. They've got a special light here that they're using to help them be able to see a little bit better. Jack down on the right side. Labonte is in right behind Dale Earnhardt. Both left sides are up. Labonte's up, so is Dale Earnhardt. Earnhardt now with the left side tires on. Jerry is with Rusty Wallace. Jerry?
Work continues on the Kodiak car. 4 tires. He's down and away. Richard Petty's STP Pontiac likewise getting service on pit road. Ricky Rudd. All the top 5 cars fitting together here toward turn 1.
Rusty Wallace picking up a position because he got out ahead of Terry Labonte. So Rusty Wallace will be now right behind Dale Earnhardt. Quite a story of Rusty. And it just goes to show you that once you reach the point where you're a lap down, it really doesn't make that much difference on Bristol International Raceway. Earnhardt will be the leader. Rusty Wallace 2nd, Terry Labonte 3rd. When we to green. 9 laps completed. This time around, the field, well, we thought they were going to get the green flag, but they will not. The pace car will stay out, so we'll go at least one more time. This will be the completion of lap number 290. And we got 3 abreast formation down at turn number 4 as Bobby Allison is the middle car there with Bill Elliott on the low side and Earnhardt, our leader, on the high side.
What Bobby feels as though is that he's just 1 lap down, so he wants to have that position at the head of the line.
Rusty, this is Bob Jenkins up in the ESPN booth. You got a copy on us?
Go ahead, Bob.
Well, you've done an outstanding job making up that lap now. You finally got worked up to 2nd place. Do you have enough to challenge Dale Earnhardt?
I don't know, Bob. I think we're about to. It just depends on tire stackers and a different set of tires. Dale put a set of sticker tires on earlier. We didn't, and I beat him, so I don't know what the day holds for us. Just hope we can win it.
Rusty, very quickly, has it been a typical Bristol race? That is a lot of bumping and banging out there. Has it been a pretty clean one for you?
It's a typical Bristol race. Not a lot of beat banging, but a couple mechanical failures. It's been pretty good for me. Getting that lap back was rough.
Go back to work, Rusty. We'll talk to you later. Good, best of luck.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Rusty, 1 to go.
Let's summarize the pit stops that have just occurred. Earnhardt came in first, left first. Labonte and Wallace, however, traded positions as Rusty is now 2nd and Terry back to 3rd.
It's not that everybody is not that good as far as the pit crews go. It's that everybody is that good. They have really worked themselves up to athletic excellence on these pit stops.
There you can see it took the Junior Johnson crew more time to get Terry in and out. And as far as driver is concerned, Terry was the best.
Yeah, Terry really saved them. You know, as you look at that point right there, that the pit crew spent about 2 seconds longer than the pit crew of Rusty Wallace and Dale Earnhardt. But Terry really saved them, made those pit stops pretty equal. Jerry, you got a comment?
I think Rusty Wallace staff really got this crew pumped up. They saw him get that lap back on Earnhardt, and they pumped him up so much they got him in and out in about 21 seconds for changing 4 tires. That put him in second place. Let's go to Dick Berggren.
Thank you. I'll sit with it.
Well, Dick will have a report.
Well, if you're wondering around who's the king of sweat, it's right down here in Darrell Waltrip's pit. Look at this. They're replacing the whole front end on this car. Here's the lower A-frame. They've changed that. They've changed the upper A-frame, all the locating rods, the hubs, the brakes, the spindles, everything. These guys are working their brains out to get their guy back in the race. Back to racing, guys.
All right, and Earnhardt has pulled away now from Rusty Wallace as Terry Labonte is right on Rusty's rear fin.
Bob, a comment about Rusty. The last time we had a yellow flag and they went back to green, Rusty was passed by 2 or 3 cars. He was better after about 25 or 30 green flag laps. Now here is Labonte putting the pass on the inside of Rusty. I get a feeling that there's something about the setup of Rusty's car that it's a little better after several green flag laps. He needs to work some heat into the tires. As the tires get warmer, they seem to mesh. They harmonize with the setting a little more than what they do when everything is cold. So if Rusty runs according to form as we have seen him earlier tonight, he'll be better in about 15 laps. We're 296 laps in this race, so still a long ways to go, but it looks like that Rusty Wallace is not good right after yellows.
Well, at the moment, they're providing some excellent racing for the fans gathered here. Now, Labonte has about a half a car length advantage on Rusty in second position.
As a matter of fact, at one of those yellows, remember he started alongside of Dale, and Dale took off just like this. Rusty dropped back by about 10 or 15 car lengths. Once he got his momentum up, then he came back and got his lap back.
While Earnhardt leads this battle for second position, Terry Labonte in the Budweiser car and Rusty Wallace in the Kodiak-sponsored Pontiac. Great racing, just wheel to wheel all over the racetrack.
Rusty has had 5 top 8 finishes in the last 5 races, including a first and a fourth in the last 2 races. Each of them seen on ESPN, winning, of course, at Watkins Glen on the road course and running 4th last week. And remember, he might have contributed a little bit to his chances for a victory last week. He got way high on the racetrack coming out of turn number 2 inside the last 15 laps of the contest and had to settle for 4th. But he was up front, and he was in that almost poetic position to win. Now look at Wallace. Wallace is pulled out. See, as the car seems to heat up, the tires heat up, and it seems to go a little better. I doubt that Labonte has slowed down. Junior Johnson is a master at maintaining that consistency, but it looks like it's coming back a little bit. The car and the racetrack are coming into Rusty. Now let's see if he can move in a little bit on Dale Earnhardt.
Well, during the first 300 laps of this race, I think Dale has pretty much demonstrated that he does have the superior car, and everybody has been chasing him and really not that much successful. But we will see now things are changing as Rusty Wallace is just about a second or a second and a half behind Dale Earnhardt. Well, the track is somewhat rough here at Bristol International Raceway, and we had an opportunity to talk with Rusty Wallace about that fact.
As much as you get tossed around inside these cars and on the racetrack here by the banking, is it okay, or do you expect to actually run into some people periodically and bounce off a few folks and do a little fender tagging?
Well, you don't try to, but sometimes when you're passing a guy with as rough as the racetrack is, it does happen sometimes. And in fact, I've noticed just a little while ago when I was practicing my Busch Grand National car that when I hit the bumps, my feet were flying off the pedals. So I got a little work there to try to figure out how to keep down on a floorboard. It's getting a little rougher than it's ever been, but it's still a neat track.
Now, Rusty Wallace, of course, was a participant in the Busch Grand National race that we televised for you live last night here on ESPN, but unfortunately fell out of the race.
Rusty Wallace has won 3 times in his Winston Cup career. You know, he's been so strong lately, Bob. You sit back and you think, geez, Rusty and Barry Dotson, they must have won 7 or 8 times because they've been that good recently. But he only has 3 career wins. But make no mistake about it, Rusty Wallace knows how to win, as does the man right there, of course, in the STP Dayglow Orange and Petty Blue number 43. And there's Kenny Schrader moving underneath the number 33 car of Harry Gant. By the way, a lot has been talked about in regards to Kenny Schrader and where he is headed in 1988. Kenny did tell me this afternoon that he has informed Junie Donlevy that he is leading the team. He will be leading Junie Donlevy's number 90 team for the 1988 season. He did not say where he was going. He's still in negotiations.
Well, this is a battle for position here between Rick Wilson and Sterling Marlin. Now, the 22 car of Bobby Allison is only 1 lap down, while Wilson and Marlin are both 2 laps down, but they are battling for position. In fact, 9th.
Bobby Allison's been an interesting story tonight, Bob. He has struggled to stay close to the lead lap and has been failing in most of those efforts, but he has periodically shown signs of strength. Bobby Allison, one of America's most active race drivers still. He flies all over the country, sleeps about 6 hours of the night, spends another 6 hours a day in the airplane, and races maybe 12 a day.
And look at this. Here is a challenge of Ricky Rudd for that 3rd position with Terry Labonte. And Ricky has been a rather quiet giant tonight on this racetrack. He started the race from 7th position, and Rudd has been in there all the way. Right now in 4th, but trading some paint, it looks like, with Terry Labonte looking for 3rd.
Of all the people who started tonight's race, Ricky Rudd is the leader among those who's finished 2nd. 4 times Ricky Rudd has finished 2nd here at Bristol.
Rudd is chasing Terry Labonte as they pass the slower car of Dave Marcus, who had a problem earlier in the evening, brought out one of our caution flags, as a matter of fact, but is in the race. We have completed 313 laps here at Bristol International Raceway, and the lead continues to be held by Dale Earnhardt. Again from Jack Murphy Stadium as our coverage of NFL preseason games continue. Tomorrow night, the Rams and the Chargers right here on ESPN. And next week, next Sunday, as a matter of fact, at 1:30 Eastern Time, we'll be live at Elkhart Lake, Wisconsin. Bring you coverage of the Livingwell Provimi Field 204 Indy cars. We haven't seen the Indy cars since Portland back in the middle part of June, and we will have, however, live coverage of that IndyCar race next Sunday. Here at Bristol, with 319 laps completed now, less than 200 to go, Dale Earnhardt continues to lead. In 2nd position, there he is, Rusty Wallace. And then the battle for 3rd, which is still raging on. That is Terry Labonte in the 11 car and Ricky Rudd in the Motorcraft Ford. Rudd would like to put his car in victory lane for a couple of reasons. First of all, it would bring Ford its first win here at Bristol since 1971, when David Pearson took the checkers.
You know that old saying about the more things change, the more things stay the same? Well, the short track performances, as you know, we here at ESPN have broken down the tracks that the Winston Cup stars run on into 4 different types. There are short tracks. There are 8 races as we look at Ricky Rudd and his short track results for 1987. There are 10 mid-size tracks, 3 road courses, and 8 races on the super speedways. Well, on the short tracks, you just saw what Ricky Rudd has done this year. 2 top 10s. Terry Labonte has finished in the top 10 all 4 of the previous races. Remember, he was filled in for by Brett Bodine, Jeff Bodine's brother. Earnhardt, as we mentioned, has won all 4. Bill Elliott, until tonight, had a good run going on the short tracks. He had finished in the top 10 also all 4 times. And incidentally, Alan Kulwicki had finished in the top 10 3 times with a 4th, 5th, and 6th. But there really is something when somebody says, hey, I'm good on a short track or I'm good on a super speedway. You can really see this pattern developing.
Dale Earnhardt has been the dominant force in this race. We present our field summary now and give you an indication of who all is still running in this 500-lap contest. There is the winner, rather the leader, could be the winner later tonight. Stay tuned. Dale Earnhardt. And he is the only driver, amazing statistic, to finish all of the races in 1987. Now there's the 62 car of one of those involved in a battle for the Rookie of the Year honors from Fort Wayne, Indiana, Steve Crispin in the AC Sparkplug Pontiac.
He did a good job of steering through an incident earlier tonight that included Phil Parsons, and he's run a solid race, run up near the front in some of the segments, although he was a couple of laps down.
The number 71 car of Dave Marcus is still on the racetrack, but well off the pace. Marcus in the Lifebuoy Chevrolet.
It was one of the 11 Chevrolets that started this race. More Chevys than any other brand began this race. You can see the results of his 1987 performances. Marcus began the race in 10th position and has been several laps down since his crash.
Jimmy Means was involved in the very first caution period of the evening. He spun coming off turn number 4, trying to avoid Bill Parsons, who had already spun. He is driving the Eureka Pontiac.
And Jimmy had qualified 25th quickest tonight. There was the pole setter, the fastest of the 30 qualifiers, Terry Labonte. You can see his 1987 results 14 times. He has finished in the top 10. Brett Bodine got 2 of those top 10 finishes for him.
And Labonte is third. Here's the 4th place car, driven by Ricky Rudd. 19 starts here at Bristol and 12 top 10s. Not a bad record at all.
No, the Bud Moore car is one car that has been mentioned in some circles as a potential for Kenny Schrader for next year. And I would say the performance of Bud Moore's car and Judy Dunleavy's car has been pretty much consistent one to another throughout the 1987 season.
The number 5 car of Jeff Bodine. He has had his problems during the first 200 laps of the race. Nevertheless, he is shown in 7th, 2 laps to the rear.
Brett Bodine, who almost won at the Martinsville racetrack earlier this year. You can see that he had that 3rd at Martinsville as a race he was leading. And now we go back to the king, Richard Penny, who finished 2nd here at Bristol earlier in the spring. There's Schrader.
And he is the last car on the lead lap. Petty is 5th. Now there is Ken Schrader. No, it's not Neil Bonnet. He climbed out of the car a little bit earlier, suffering from some fumes that came into the cockpit. So Ken Schrader, who dropped out earlier in the contest, is in that machine. Now there is Harry Gant, and Harry would like very much to have a good showing here tonight. It's not been a good season for Harry. He qualified 5th, however, and is at the moment in 8th, 2 laps down.
The 30 car, sponsored by All Pro, the new name that has adorned the fenders of this machine in the last couple of months, is Michael Waltrip. And Michael's having a good midseason. A lot of people expect that the infusion of more money in 1988 will really do Michael's career a great deal of good. He's become very consistent as a qualifier. He has found some speed that this team has not had heretofore. He's been qualifying in the first sessions on a regular basis.
Bobby Allison goes to the high side to pass Michael Waltrip. Bobby Allison is a lap down in 6th position at the moment in the Miller American Buick. And here comes the number 4 car of Rick Wilson. He is 11th, according to our statistics. His first short track race of 1987. We've already talked about Michael Waltrip. Here is Bill Elliott, who is shown in 10th position, 2 laps down. Bill came in for an early pit stop and has just been unable to recover from that.
Certainly one of the strongest performers of the last 3 seasons in Winston Cup racing, and he has started 222 times, and he's won 9% of them. This man right here, Dale Earnhardt, has won 50% in 1987.
So we've circled the track, and Dale Earnhardt continues to set the pace with 338 laps completed. That's our field summary for you, and an idea of who is still running in this 500-lap race at Bristol International Raceway. We hope you're enjoying it, and we'll be back with more of our live coverage after Bristol International Raceway in Tennessee for the Busch 500, and Dale Earnhardt is the leader of this race. He has more points, Winston Cup points, than any driver after 19 races in the modern point system, and is well on his way to defending his Winston Cup title. Now, Alan Kulwicki is there in the midst of the number 44 car of Sterling Marlin and the 18 car of Dale Jarrett. Now, we didn't get to show you everybody that was out on the racetrack because Earnhardt is setting such a terrific pace, and we caught up with him before we showed you everybody. But here are 3 cars that we didn't show you. We're in once again Kulwicki's car with a Hardee's race cam, and we have a car slowing.
Bobby Allison apparently has lost one. To quote Bobby, sometimes he'll come in and he'll say, "Bobby, what happened?" And he'll say, "She blowed up." And that may well be the situation there. Lots of steam coming out of the exhaust headers, and it does appear to be a terminal problem. Bobby Allison had been able to stay 1 lap down to the leader, so he still had an outside shot.
Lap 346 is the lap that we had the caution on, and that's our 7th of the evening. Now, what this means is that probably everybody will be coming in for a pit stop, don't you think, Larry?
Yeah, I would imagine so, because they want to make sure they got a good set of tires on. I'll give the crews a chance to check it out. They may think twice about fuel, though, because they don't want to overload the cars. They might want to check their fuel efficiency and make some significant decisions in regards to that. All the leaders are in. There's Earnhardt taking a a pause that refreshes. Rusty Wallace is just down pit road behind Dale. There's Rusty. He's about 6 car lengths behind Dale, and Jerry is there.
Rusty Wallace getting left side tires. They've already changed the right side tires. Floyd, Barry Dodson, and the crew are really pumped up. Terry Labonte is also in. Rusty Wallace down pit road. It'll be a drag race, and Rusty Wallace moving down. Dick Berggren is down the opposite end.
Terry Labonte is still in here from his 4-tire change. Finally, he goes out. They made a big wedge change on that car. Hopefully, it'll help him run better.
Well, it's been consistent throughout the evening. It really doesn't make any difference because we are under yellow, but the Junior Johnson team has taken more time with Terry in the pit area than Dale Earnhardt or Rusty Wallace, either one.
Dick made comment about the wedge change. We'll come back to that in a second. Here's a recap of the yellow flags of this evening.
As you can see, 7 caution periods so far. Really not a whole lot of laps have been lost in the yellow periods. The one involving Ken Schrader was the longest, and that was for 9. This one involves the number 22 car of Bobby Allison, who apparently lost something in the motor and dropped to the inside of the track. They're checking it right now for oil on the racetrack. We're 348 laps in at the portion of the 48,000 people who have turned out at Larry Carrier's Bristol International Raceway for this Busch 500 Winston Cup race. Bobby Allison brings the car low on the racetrack as he pulls out of competition. Now, when you have a problem with a tire, say it equalizes or it cuts, you are protected, as explained by Dr. Punch.
In the early days of racing, one of the most common causes for violent flips or crashes or somersaults was a cut tire. Now, when a tire was shredded, the car would lurch down onto the pavement. The bare wheel would dig into the asphalt, and the car would begin to flip. Well, in 1964, Goodyear developed the inner liner to prevent that. Basically, a tire within a tire. We'll show you. This is the inner liner here, and you see it inflated inside the tire. Now, when a tire is cut on the track, you simply ride back to pit road, change the tire, and be on your way. No problem. We'll show you how this works. You take a simple valve stem, insert it in the tube all the way down, and inflate the tube. Now, this tube is actually inside the inner liner. Then you take the valve stem, turn it back 1 full turn, and it lines up with the holes outside the tube, so the air will leak outside this tube and inflate the outside tire. Now, the outside tire is 20 pounds lower in pressure than the inner liner. Here, it's 50 pounds per square inch. The inner liner is 70. Now, what happens when the inner liner begins to leak down and pressure begins to equalize between the inner liner and the outside tire? Well, with equal pressure, this inner liner will begin to flop and roll as the car turns laps on the racetrack. That'll cause a vibration in the car. The car will begin to shake and bounce. Could even rip away a fender. You have to come down pit road and make a tire change. That's what's called an equalized tire. Something old, well, the safety feature of the inner liner. Something new that's been happening recently, particularly with chrome wheels, is an inner liner deflating or being turned on the wheel. That causes an equalized tire.
We're less than 150 laps from the end of this Busch 500, and at the moment, Dale Earnhardt continues to lead. We are back at Bristol International Raceway in Tennessee for the Busch 500, and we've just come off a caution period. And during that period, here's the summary for you. Earnhardt, as you can see, remained in the lead, and Wallace remains second. Rudd remains fourth. Now, the Vassar stats, which are very interesting, and by the way, these are provided by Golden Rule Insurance.
The pit crew of Rusty Wallace really got him in and out in fine fashion. Rusty apparently took his good old time about getting in there, getting in at 27 seconds. Took a grand total of 47 seconds to get in and out. Ricky Rudd got it done in just 20.1 seconds, but because they were under yellow, the crew time was equalized by everybody, and they came out on the racetrack together.
So we are back to green now, and Dale Earnhardt continues to lead with about a half a straightaway advantage on Rusty Wallace. Now, one of the guys that we're paying particular attention to is Darrell Waltrip, who is back in the race.
Dale Earnhardt continues to lead this way. Dale Earnhardt is going around the outside of Darrell Waltrip right now. Darrell Waltrip has come back out on the racetrack. He is now 94 laps in arrears. Darrell Waltrip, Tim Hammond and crew, they have done just a bang-up job, or a bang-on job, if that's what you want to call it, in getting that car back out.
Larry, Rusty is catching Dale.
Well, comment that I made during the last break, Bob, and you'll back me up on this, right, is that if we don't go yellow, I think that Rusty Wallace, I'll go out on a limb here, I think that Rusty Wallace has got this race because consistently tonight he drops back a little bit after a yellow flag and we go to green, and he really picks up the momentum as the laps wear on. And I know Dale has been very dominant. Certainly the short tracks have been his forte. He's undefeated. He's batting 1,000. You think things are going hot right now in Major League Baseball, Molitor and all that, but Rusty Wallace is batting 1,000.
We've mentioned it before this evening, but don't forget that Rusty won his very first Winston Cup race here on this track, the Valleydale 500 last year, the spring race. Now here is Rick Wilson and Sterling Marlin. And Wallace, or rather Wilson, is 2 laps down. Marlin is 3 laps down. All this is happening right behind Alan Kowicki, who's carrying our Hardee's race cam.
Yeah, and as we reported earlier this week, as we continue to watch from the Xerox Ford of Alan Kowicki, there is outside that back window the Piedmont Olds on the outside and the Kodak Olds on the inside. As we reported earlier this week on our weekly show, Steve Meal officially has announced that he will be leaving the Hagen Racing Enterprises Piedmont Airlines Underall sponsored Winston Cup racing team. He resigned that position this week, and it is effective with the conclusion of tonight's Winston Cup Busch 500. So Steve Meal, who is one of the rising stars among the mechanical ranks of Winston Cup racing, is moving on.
And of course, he'll be going to the new Jack Roush Winston Cup effort. There's the interval between first and second. It's definitely closing. Dale Earnhardt will have his hands full here in a moment with Rusty Wallace, who's closing in. Here's Jerry Punch.
Interesting about the car Rusty Wallace is driving. This is probably the oldest car in Winston Cup activity. This car is 6 years old. It was built back in 1981 by Banjo Matthews. This car settled on pole with Tim Richmond in Charlotte and Atlanta. But more important, this car is nicknamed Samson. Why? Because the longer you run it, the stronger it gets. And we're showing right now. Let's find out if Rusty Wallace can catch Dale Earnhardt. Here's the crew chief, Barry Dodson. Barry, can old Samson catch Earnhardt?
Shape, according to probably needs around the bite in it. We can make it on fuel. I don't think they can.
Well, they think they can do it here, and possibly they can. Let's find out about Dale Earnhardt. Dick Berggren is there.
Well, I'm with Dale Earnhardt's car owner, Richard Childress. Richard, can you guys hold off Rusty Wallace?
I don't know, Dick. It's pretty close right now. Both cars look like they're pretty well even.
How about adjustments? If you have another flag, can you make some adjustments to the car and pick up some additional speed?
Well, I think it'll depend on which car gets the best set of stagger on their tires.
Okay, the last pit stop may well determine the winner of this event.
All right, our hats off to you guys down in the pit area. Not only is it a warm summer night down there, but also the noise is just incredible. If you can imagine how the noise just reverberates off this banking, and it's trapped right in the pit area. It's very difficult to communicate with the people that you're trying to interview and to hear the commands that you're getting in your headphones, and we salute you guys. You're doing a great job. But there is Dale Earnhardt, who is the leader with 377 laps now completed. We're less than 125 from the end. Larry Newber, Dick Berggren, and Jerry Punch back for coverage of the Busch 500 Winston Cup race here at Bristol International Raceway. Earnhardt leads, Wallace is second. Back in the pack, we see Harry Gant racing with Jeff Bodine and Bill Elliott, as Bodine and Elliott are side by side.
And they are battling for position. They are each 2 laps in arrears, and this is the fight for 7th. Jeff Bodine on the outside, Bill Elliott on the inside. They are racing right behind Harry Gant, who is being shown in 6th, and Rick Wilson in 9th.
So 6th, 7th, and 8th right here together. Gant holding on to 6th, and behind him, he's watching the action provided by Elliott and Jeff Bodine. Bodine's car showing perhaps the most battle scars from this race. He's got some pretty heavy damage there on the right front corner of that car. But Harry Gant, meanwhile, is leading both of these guys and doing a very fine job. And Gant didn't participate in the final practice period at all that we had here this afternoon. There was a practice period in the morning, then we had second round qualifying, and then the final session. Harry did practice in the morning session, but chose not to in the second session, electing instead to just keep the car in the pit area. Perhaps the crew knew that the car was set up as well as it could be, and they were just going to let it go for the race.
A lot of the top teams, Kenny Schrader and Rusty Wallace, for instance, also did that, Bob. Did not practice in the afternoon because when you think about it, at 90 degrees plus, bright sunshine, conditions were dramatically different than what they were at the start of this race. So you ask yourself, why do it? Unless you had a serious problem, and frankly, it just didn't seem to make that much sense to go out to practice this afternoon unless there was something really specific that you needed to work on, like making sure the car turned left.
In 1987, Harry Gant has had a 7th-place finish at Darlington, a 6th at Bristol here on this racetrack, and a 9th at Daytona. But other than that, he has not finished in the top 10.
The comment about changing the wedge has come up a couple of times from our pit reports. Those of you who have been around Winston Cup racing know what's going on, of course. In case you don't, there are basically bolts inside the rear windows of these cars. As we look at 6th place Harry Gant, they have a spring adjusted to them, and you can reach in there and make adjustments on them. It doesn't just redistribute the weight around inside the car. It's not like a re-engineered machine. It just directs the direction that the car will send weight. And you reach down there, you can turn around once or twice. About one turn around on the bolt is worth about 15 pounds, and usually during a race you add wedge, which means that you're putting more force down in the right rear trying to get the car to stick better.
Well, Harry's lost a couple of positions in the last couple of laps as Jeff Bodine has moved to 6th. Elliott comes along in 7th, and back to 8th spot is Harry Gant. And that's Ken Schrader in Neil Bonnett's car that's running right behind Harry Gant. And Schrader running that car quite hard.
Yeah, he really is. You can see the sparks coming out from underneath Bill Elliott's car as he caroms around the 35-degree banking. Lots of wheel travel here. That's one of the real big assignments of the crews, is that you have to set these cars up so the tires don't rub against the wheel wells. You'll see the largest openings as far as wheel well openings as you will on any racetrack on the circuit, but still often it's not enough. There is Bill Elliott as he pulls into the pits, getting a change of right side rubber. The crew looking underneath to make certain that there is no excessive rubbing going on. Maybe they have just a little bit more of a problem than a tire problem. They're spending significant time inside the right front wheel well before they apply that tire.
And he was running quite well, but this is definitely an unscheduled stop. He was 7th, battling there with Jeff Bodine and Harry Gant, and all of a sudden ducked into the pits. He spent 25.6 seconds in the pits, and that's going to drop him at least one more lap down. Well, Jeff Bodine has been involved in several incidents here on Bristol International Raceway. We asked him about that. Is it perhaps over?
I don't think it's over. What you saw last time was a bit of frustration on my part. It seemed like everyone hit me out there, you know. Once, twice, 3 times, 4 times. I was a punching bag, I guess, and I ended up getting put out of the race. So I was pretty frustrated. The banging is part of Winston Cup racing. The fender banging, the bumping around, the shoving around, especially on a track like Bristol, a short track. So I'm sure you're going to see it here. It's going to be exciting. I don't think we've eliminated that from the sport at all. The unnecessary stuff is what everyone's concerned about. Drivers, NASCAR, owners, race fans, everyone's concerned about the unnecessary stuff. The stuff that puts a guy in the fence and possibly hurts him, you know. We don't want to see that. But the pushing and shoving, it's still there.
It's been a relatively clean race, though, for everybody tonight, as we have not seen the aggressive driving, so to speak, as we have in the past. Dale Earnhardt is caught behind a slower car, Rick Wilson, and look at Rusty close in on him. Now we'll see if perhaps Rusty will make a run at Dale Earnhardt.
Well, it was like a cobra striking. He was sitting out there like sitting next to the sleeping bag, and as soon as the man in the bag moved, Rusty struck.
And he is now within just a car length of Dale Earnhardt. They come off of corner number 4, and Rusty stays behind Dale, but will he make a shot here at it in the first and second turns? There are 100 laps to go. We've reached 400.
Wallace and Earnhardt, the interval has been consistent. Now Rusty Wallace goes to the high side of Dale. Has Rusty been waiting? I had a feeling a few laps ago that one of them wasn't showing us all that he had. Rusty has an opening now. Will he choose to exercise it here with 100 laps to go? It looks like he would like to go to the front. He has been about 6 car lengths behind Dale for the last 20 laps, but now Rusty Wallace is going for it.
Well, you know now that Dale Earnhardt is using everything he can to stay ahead of Rusty. It's no longer a question of is he staying or is he allowing the others to catch up. He is trying desperately to hold off the challenge of Rusty Wallace. Wallace high on the racetrack there, very high down in turns number 1. He's been fighting this car and trying to keep it under control for several laps. All of this is happening now alongside Alan Kowicki's Xerox Ford. Dale Earnhardt goes by, and here comes Rusty Wallace also.
Well, one thing for certain, there are 2 places that Dale Earnhardt is comfortable in running, and that's first or not in the race. Dale wants to lead every lap, and Rusty Wallace knows right now this is very important that he shows Dale Earnhardt that he has the ability to pass him and perhaps go on to win this race. Remember, inside of 100 laps, no guarantee that there'll be another yellow. You kind of figure there will be, but right now this is a race for the lead. It's unlikely that anybody is waiting.
And you noticed how well Dale Earnhardt used Derry Cope there coming off the 4th turn banking, so we could get down to a situation where slower cars play a very big factor in the outcome of this race. We'll be back in a moment. Nighttime sky is lit up by fireworks coming from underneath the Piedmont Oldsmobile, driven by Sterling Marlin. He came in contact with the wall up in turn number 3. The caution flag is out for the 8th time tonight, and it comes on lap 410. Marlin is heading for the pit area.
2 things. First of all, there were 2 concussions. There may have been a blown tire, and now the leaders are both coming in. This will be a critical stop. This could be our last pit stop. What do you think, Jerry Punch?
Rusty Wallace in the pits. He's on the bottom. Dale Earnhardt on the top. We'll see which crew can get the car out first. Wallace's crew, right side tire. They will come around with a jack to the left side. Same car, Earnhardt's car, down off the jack. Left side tires for Earnhardt. Same for Rusty Wallace. The Kodiak Pontiac with the body being screened. The Wrangler Chevrolet. The crew's working so we can get off pit road. Both cars off the jack, and it'll be a race down pit road. It looks like Dale Earnhardt will win the race.
Wow. That was about as perfect as close you could get.
Yeah. Well, one advantage that Earnhardt has, he's in the very last pit down there and doesn't have anybody in front of him. And Rusty, although the stops were just about equal, lost a fraction of a second as he had to go to the right to get out from behind that car that was in front of him. So they're going to remain the same. Earnhardt the leader, and Wallace, Eastern Tennessee. The caution is out, and we're at lap number 412. Here are the leaders: Dale Earnhardt, Rusty Wallace, Ricky Rudd is 3rd, Richard Petty 4th, and Terry Labonte is 5th. Those 5 cars are on the lead lap while we're still under yellow. Another break. We'll be right back. Back at Bristol, where the caution flag remains out, there was an object laying on the track right at the start-finish line, and that's delayed our going green. So Harold Kinder still displaying the caution. Now we'll try to talk to Rusty here in the meantime.
Rusty, this is Larry Newber up at ESPN. We have been having a lot of fun watching you and Dale enjoying yourself out there. You guys are having fun, aren't you?
That's a lot of fun, but it's hard work, I can say that. These high banks in Bristol really start to wear the driver. I'm glad the caution come out. Gave me a chance to catch my breath again. I was trying to drive awful hard there.
Now, Rusty, Barry tells us that you guys have put stickers on this time. Do you expect the performance of the car to be off when we first go green and maybe take a run at Dale in perhaps 25 laps?
Yeah, my car seems to run a little better later on, so I don't know what's going to happen, Larry. Let's just hope it happens good.
Well, you're definitely in it, Rusty. It's between the 2 of you, although I know everybody has to keep their eyes on the other 3 cars that remain on the lead lap. Good luck to you, Rusty.
Okay, thank you.
Now we're getting the indication of 1 more lap to go. In the meantime, we'll show you the pit stop summary. And Labonte came in 3rd, went out 5th. Rudd came in 4th, out 3rd. And Richard Petty went in 5th and moved up to 4th position. So again, the top 5 cars, which are the only cars on the lead lap, really didn't change many positions. Now to the faster stats.
There was a little bit of distance between the first 5 cars, and Dale and Rusty being the key, getting out at the same time. Look at Richard Petty. He spent only 6 seconds. That's total 6 seconds getting into and then out of the pits, really moving up and down pit lane. It kept his total time down to less than 30 seconds, although just about 30 seconds. You can see Ricky Rudd spending 43.5 seconds and the high 30s, both Rusty Wallace and Dale Earnhardt. Dick, you've got some additional information on pit work.
Yeah, I sure have, Larry. I want to tell you that Earnhardt did the same thing that Rusty did. They took on 4 sticker tires. They made no changes in the chassis. One of the guys from the Rusty Wallace pit came down just to see what they did to make sure. And right now we're getting ready for a green flag.
We We've got 83 laps to go as the green flag comes back out at Bristol, and we're racing once again. Now, we'll watch Rusty. Again, he has sticker tires on that car. It could be that they will not perform as well for him here now as they will in the next few laps.
Well, as Dick told us, both of them do. Also, there was a change in the weight jack, the wedge, on the Wallace car.
Here is Richard Petty and Jeff Bodine side by side, and there is the number 11 car of Terry Labonte. Now, Labonte and Petty are going for position.
We've made the comment of sticker tires here a couple of times. No, those aren't special tires with special adhesive or something painted on the outside. It's brand new rubber. Oftentimes, the teams will go out and scuff tires in during practice, put 3 or 4 hard laps on them, and then they put them on during the race. Sometimes the feeling is that tires that have been scuffed in perform a little better a little sooner. But the new tires that Goodyear has been producing seem to be just as good. The teams can take the chance. It's really not a chance anymore. You put brand new tires on, and you don't have to put them on and test drive them, so to speak, to find out how they're going to perform. They still actually have the stickers on them when you apply them on the car, hence the term stickers.
Terry Labonte has just taken 4th place away from Richard Petty. Now, Petty had his best finish of the 1987 Winston Cup season so far here on this racetrack in the spring race, and he has been in the top 5 just about all race long. He has dropped back to 5th there as Terry Labonte has just passed him, but nevertheless, Petty with a very strong performance. And right behind the Petty and Terry Labonte battle is our in-car camera with Alan Kulwicki.
Alan's really had a good race, Bob, but just those little nagging problems have jumped up and bothered him. He's had some bad luck tonight, and it's kept him 2-3 laps off the pace. He's right now 3 laps off the pace, running in 9th position, I believe it is. You can see him trying to follow the line around. The line changes here at this half-mile racetrack, right up against the wall, coming down the front stretch. You dive down low into the number 1, number 2 corner, depending upon where the car feels comfortable. You can kind of gauge where you should be by following that dashed line on the inside. That is the constant radius away from the wall. You can tell how far you are away from the outside wall.
But look, as you go into the corner, Larry, you'll notice that the top of the car drop down to the point where you literally can't see more than a few feet ahead of you.
Yeah, and there are people everywhere, and throughout most of this night they have been standing up and making noise. There is Rick Wilson directly behind, and Bill Elliott also, the Kodak Olds, and of course the Harry Melling Coors Beer Ford Thunderbird of Bill Elliott.
Rick Wilson, we will remind you once again, is in 9th position, 3 laps down. Bill Elliott is in 10th, but he is 4 laps down to the leader, Dale Earnhardt.
It really is like you're on a ride at the fair, going around and around and around, and it happens just about as quick, covering more than a half mile in about 17 seconds, and it's constant all night. It's a drone. You keep doing it all night long, lap after lap. Basically, it's the same maneuver. Some of the drivers will tell you that you work into a pattern which can be good if the car's running strong, but it can be a negative because it has a tendency, I used the word earlier, to mesmerize you.
Once again, we're watching from Alan Kulwicki's Xerox Ford with our Hardee's race cam. There is Jeff Bodine right ahead, and Buddy Arrington there on the inside. Now watch the work that the driver has to go through in a normal lap. The amount of physical effort he has to do to keep that car running where it should.
And I'll also tell you something else. The TV camera belies the real angle of those turns. Those turns are 35-degree banks, and they're almost impossible to walk up. If you have a pair of Oxfords on and not leather soled, you cannot walk up the track unless you take one careful sideways step at a time and try and move up a couple of inches higher. It's just about impossible. There goes Rick Wilson dipping down on the inside, and there goes Bill Elliott. Alan Kulwicki has a bird's eye seat, as you do, as Wilson and Elliott go by.
Once again, Kulwicki was the 4th fastest qualifier for this race, but and there goes another car. That's Ken Schrader passing Alan Kulwicki. And there is the leader, Dale Earnhardt, and he has opened up a little bit of distance between himself and Rusty Wallace, as again the interval is about a half a straightaway, or perhaps 1.5 seconds. Earnhardt is the leader with 433 laps completed here at Bristol. Back in a moment. 5. Notice that Terry Labonte is 4th and Richard Petty is 5th, but those 5 cars are on the lead lap, and we are nearing the closing laps of this Busch 500. And look at Ricky Rudd. He has almost caught Rusty Wallace, so Rusty has not had a particularly good performance since that most recent caution period.
Well, something else that can happen, if the car is really set up perfectly, as the Childress Wrangler car has been all year long, as we have 2 cars very close on the backstretch. One of them was Kowicki going by right by you. There's Ricky Rudd running in 3rd. If the car is set up just perfect, it gives you more latitude. The tires may not have to be exactly perfect to give you a good run. If the car is off just a little bit, like perhaps the Rusty Wallace car is, the tires have to be absolutely dead nuts on to really give you a good performance out of it.
Rusty Wallace has passed, and now Ricky Rudd has passed Alan Kowicki, and that car has, in the last few laps, dropped off the pace considerably because he is being passed by just about everybody out there.
Rusty Wallace seems to be moving in. Maybe he's found something. Maybe the lug bolts as they put them on that car. You know, they've had a problem with also the chrome wheels. The lug bolts have not been fitting on just perfect on those cars all year long, and it's been a problem. They've chosen to go with the chrome wheels. They certainly look nice out there. Rusty seems to be picking up now.
He has Jimmy Means ahead of him. Now Means moves to the inside, and Rusty is able to pass him without any problem. And he is definitely closing in on Dale Earnhardt, but at the same time, so is Ricky Rudd. Now again, we had an opportunity to talk with Rusty Wallace earlier in the weekend.
Yeah, you got to race both. It's not like a place like Darlington where you just got to race the racetrack and be careful. You can run this place pretty hard and have a little room to slide around and do a little bumping if you had to get past somebody, but I try not to do that. I just try to run the racetrack hard and, you know, use my head and try to keep tires on it and be, you know, just be easy and everything, but I can run the track and the competitors like a place like Darlington where you can't do that.
Rusty Wallace on running not only against his fellow competitors out there, but also trying to beat the racetrack. That's something you certainly got to do here at Bristol.
And now he sees Dale Earnhardt coming back to him a little bit. Ricky Rudd is coming up in the mirror, but Dale Earnhardt is coming in a little closer through the front windshield.
The 17 and the 18 cars out there. The 18 is driven by Dale Jarrett. That's the Freelander Chevrolet. And Mr. Perseverance, Darrell Waltrip. He is 94 laps down. He spent that long in the pit while the crew made repairs, but he is 12th in the serial scoring.
There's the number 18 car of Dale Jarrett.
I'm sorry, Jarrett is 12, not Waltrip.
Okay, Dale Jarrett is the number 18 car, who is now sporting the colors of Coates and Clark. They're a sewing firm that has moved into Winston Cup racing. Yet another ladies' product, proof how popular this sport is. Of course, this is the Eric Friedlander machine, one of the more brightly colored and brightly painted machines on the trail. Dale is pulling double duty this weekend at the Bristol International Raceway. He ran last night in the Busch Grand National race.
There you can see his best 1987 finish, a 10th in the Valleydale 500 here at Bristol. There is Earnhardt lapping Jarrett for another time. As Dale continues to set the pace.
50 laps to go this time by.
450 complete at Bristol.
50 laps times about 17 seconds. You can figure out the math. Does Rusty Wallace or Ricky Rudd have enough time?
Still a lot of things can happen in the last 50 laps of this race. It's not over by any means. Wallace is in a challenging position, and we'll be right back. We hope you've been enjoying tonight's live coverage of the Busch 500 Winston Cup race from Bristol International Raceway, being brought to you by the Heartbeat of America, today's Chevrolet. And in part by Mr. Goodrich. No one knows your GM car better than Mr. Goodrich. No one. By Kodacolor VRG Film, unsurpassed color and print film. Kodacolor VRG Film, the color of life. And by Quaker State Motor Oil. New Quaker State with QSX keeps your engine cleaner to last longer. With 457 laps completed, it is still Dale Earnhardt, but in the last couple of laps, we have again seen how lap traffic can definitely play a factor in the outcome of this race. Dale got hung up behind some slower traffic, and that has allowed Rusty Wallace to close in just a little bit.
And it appears as though that Ricky Rudd is the only other driver out there who's got a long shot of getting in. Terry Labonte cannot keep up, but he's running a consistent 4th place, and Richard Petty a consistent 5th place. There is Labonte running in front of Jimmy Means. Terry Labonte seems to be running a little lower than what the most quick line is here on the racetrack. There is Jimmy Means, as we mentioned, following Terry around.
Jimmy Means in the Eureka Chevrolet.
Jimmy, he's had a pretty good year, Bob. He really has. Jimmy has been very consistent in getting in the races. Some of his other peers among the independents, like J.D. McDuffie and Buddy Arrington, have not been able to get in as many races with consistency as Jimmy has. He's done all right this year. He's certainly kept his... He's made his keep is what he's done this season.
He's 10 laps down, but as you can see there for a while was staying right up with Terry Labonte. And there, once again, is first and second and the interval. It's down now to maybe 10, 15 car lengths, sometimes less than that, as Rusty Wallace continues his relentless pursuit of Dale Earnhardt, who has been definitely the dominating force in this race up to this point. He hasn't led all the way, but he has certainly been in a winning position just about all night long. Oh, we have a car that is sideways, spinning in the grass. That's Derek Cope in turn number 2. Will it bring out a caution? Harold Kinder does not throw the caution at the moment, as Cope's car is off of the racetrack down in the grass, and the crowd stands up and is cheering the fact that we do not have a caution, as they want to see the race continue. And
so does
Derek,
Rusty Wallace, I'll bet you.
Derek gets the car going once again, so we will not have a caution after that spin by Derek Cope. There it is.
There's Derek, just the very tail end of that, going into turn number 1. He had a hair-raising qualifying run on Friday night here. He was fighting that machine all the way around, much smoother in the heat of this afternoon when he attempted to qualify, and he worked his way into the starting lineup. Derek started in the 28th position, qualifying at better than 110 mile-per-hour average speed.
466 laps completed. Here's Dick Berggren as Rusty is closing in.
Well, I just asked Kurt Shelmerdine, crew chief for Dale Earnhardt, what their strategy would be for the end of the race, and if they were running as hard as they could. He said, we are running 10 tenths, well is okay. But, he said, they think Rusty is running 11 tenths. So Earnhardt's gang think they have a bit of advantage. Perhaps Jackman David Smith summarized it best when he looked at me and said, wow, this is fun. Dave, what's going on down at your end?
Well, I tell you, Rusty Wallace's crew did not want to see a caution come out. It takes about 25 or 30 laps for that old car Samson to get hooked up. They've hooked up now, and they figure the last 25 or 30 laps, this car is going to be awesome here. You know, before the race started, Dale Earnhardt and Rusty Wallace were jumping with each other. They were parked behind each other on the starting grid. And when Wallace turned around and turned his back, Earnhardt was able to sneak over, and he stole the steering wheel out of Rusty Wallace's car. He put it in his own trunk and climbed in his car. When Rusty climbed in, there was no steering wheel there. They all had a good laugh and sort of thought about it. I think Earnhardt may have had a premonition that Rusty Wallace will be the guy that will be chasing him most of the night here.
Yeah, I think you're right. Perhaps Dale just knew that Rusty was going to be his major competitor, and he is now within just a few car lengths. There you can see that Dale has led 384 of the 469 laps. The margin of first and second now about a half second and even less at some times. 8 caution periods, total of 51 laps, and 12 lead changes among 7 cars and drivers.
Bob, I think that lap traffic could play a role. That estimation of Rusty Wallace running 11/10 might be accurate. He just sailed out of the turn number 4, dirt tracking out of there. Earnhardt has a lot of lap traffic to navigate through in the final 30 laps here, and that could play a role.
And Bill Elliott comes in for another pit stop. He has been in and out of the pits much too often for that crew tonight. They're changing rubber on the right side and fueling the car up once again, and Bill Elliott has not had a particularly good race tonight here at Bristol. Back in the race, though, goes Elliott as the racing action continues on the track. We'll be right back. gathered here are not leaving because this one is far from over, although we've only got 19 more laps to go. Now, a big auto racing day coming up for you as we present Racing America on Sunday, September 6th. Complete live coverage. First of all, in the morning at 8:20 Eastern Time, the Formula One race with Jackie Stewart. Then, at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, I, along with Chrissy Konamaki, will have coverage of the Southern 500 from Darlington International Raceway. But we're not done yet by any means. The Kart Escort Radar Warning 200 from Mid-Ohio. And Larry will be there along with Tom Snevo, who'll be joining us in the broadcast booth. Then we have an IMSA race also in San Antonio, Texas. David Hobbs will be part of the broadcast. And then, of course, we'll have reports from the drag racing going on at Indianapolis Raceway Park, the U.S. National. So, a big day. We are anticipating some great coverage of a whole host of auto racing for you that day on Sunday, September the 6th.
Bob, I've been watching the two leaders, Dale Earnhardt and Rusty Wallace, and Dale is pulling away. And as the laps wear on and Dale drives harder, the line keeps moving higher and higher up the banking. Remember, we told you the banking is a little more steep up there against the wall. You can use the centrifugal force even more. You can see the distance that he is away from the broken white line marking that constant radius away from the outer wall. Earnhardt is really giving it a ride. Rusty Wallace, more often than not, is tucked down a little closer to that line, trying to keep the car tighter in there. But Dale is really letting it all hang out, and he is driving the wheels off of it, Bob. He's doing a really excellent job.
Yeah, he's threatening to make the finish not as dramatic and exciting as it could have been, because Rusty is now caught behind some slower traffic and just not nearly as fast as Dale Earnhardt is at the moment. So Earnhardt appears to be on his way to victory with 12 more laps to go.
We have never had a season in Winston Cup racing on the short track end of it, the 8 short track races, that someone has gone undefeated. But Earnhardt, should he win this one, and he certainly looks like a good bet to do it now, will be 5 for 5 on the short tracks.
His wins this year in short track competition have come at Richmond, at North Wilkesboro, here at Bristol, and at Martinsville. And as Larry indicated, well on his way to his 5th short track victory of 1987. Here is Ken Schrader coming in with a flat tire. And that is a good example of how that inner liner will protect you from serious trouble on the racetrack. Again, this is Ken Schrader in this Valvoline Pontiac number 75 doing some relief driving to Neil Bonnet. Earnhardt passing Harry Gant with 9 more laps to go.
9 more laps, Bob, and he is en route apparently to win number 9. His winning percentage has dropped off, though. Remember, it used to be 50%. Now it's only 9 out of the 20 races. Dale Earnhardt going after win number 9. There have been 8 winners in all this year. Remember, the other winners have been Elliott. He's won 3 times. Davey Allison's won twice. Tim Richmond twice. And the single winners, Ricky Rudd, Kyle Petty, Bobby Allison, and Rusty Wallace.
Dale has won 5 times at this racetrack and is about to register number 6. There is Rusty Wallace, who is in second, but really not in a challenging position at this time for Dale Earnhardt. He comes down and completes lap number 494. 6 more laps to go.
1987 is an absolutely astounding performance for this team. Dale Earnhardt has not had a dry spell. He has gone 3 races without a win, but in those 3 races, he's finished 3rd, 8th, and 2nd. Prior to that, he won 2 of the last 3 events. Earnhardt won 2 of the first 3 races of this year and 6 of the first 8. He then had a 4-5 race losing streak. That was the longest one. Tim Richmond was winning twice in the interim, and now since then his wins have continued to come.
And he is about to lap 5th place Richard Petty, and if he does, he along with 3 others will finish on the lead lap. Again, our top 5 and the cars on the lead lap are Earnhardt, Wallace, Rudd, Labonte, and Petty for the moment, but he is threatening now to go a lap down to the field as Earnhardt tries to dispose of him here with only 3 more laps to go. And Larry, the amazing statistic to me is that Dale has finished every single race this year.
Yeah, it's one one thing to run up front because it takes a big toll on a race car to run up front and lead almost half the laps as Dale has in 1987. But as you mentioned about to finish every single one is incredible.
Earnhardt apparently has radioed the Richard Childress crew that he wants oxygen immediately when the checkered flag falls, and it will fall next time around. The white flag is out. He's not going to try to do battle with Richard Petty. He's going to let Richard finish on the lead lap in 5th. Dale Earnhardt from Kannapolis, North Carolina, comes off of corner number 4 and takes the checkered flag. Earnhardt has won again in 1987. Here comes Rusty Wallace off the banking. He crosses the line in 2nd position as Earnhardt is slowing down on the backstretch on the cool-off lap. There's Richard Childress and the other members of the Earnhardt crew who have registered yet another victory in this outstanding season.
They won by over 5 seconds tonight, and boy, the big question for 1987 now becomes how many winnings can Dale Earnhardt amass? He is well over $1 million already, and there's probably another million en route.
His 6th win at Bristol, and he widens the gap even further in the battle for the Winston Cup.
You know, Bob, I think he has an outside shot if things continue at going and finishing ahead of that great money-winning season that Bill Elliott had a year or 2 years ago when he had the $1 million bonus. Earnhardt is absolutely astounding.
And he's just asking everybody to not bother him at the moment. Now, fortunately, we have Dr. Jerry Punch, and he is a physician who is talking to Dale and asking him how he feels. And Jerry, of course, will assist him in any way medically so that Dale can recuperate from what was a very, very difficult race here on these high banks of Bristol. So Dr. Punch will do his medical work, and then perhaps we'll get a chance to talk with Dale Earnhardt, who won here tonight. Has climbed out of the car, but he sits down. He wasn't feeling well last night in the Busch Grand National race, but boy, he withstood a lot of physical punishment out there tonight. Let's go to Dr. Jerry Punch.
Well, Dale trying to get out of the car and get his breath. Dale, first of all, congratulations on a tremendous, not only tremendous ride, but a tremendous endurance run tonight here at Bristol.
Well, you know, this old race team is awful tough. They get tougher every time we go to the racetrack. Kurt and Richard and the guys that did a super job all week. Wrangler Goodrich Chevrolet didn't run bad either. But, you know, Rusty was awful tough, and he got his lap back. We had a set of tires on it, really didn't suit me, but you know, after a while, he'd run me back down, and he'd run me back down that last time there, and I said, well, I got to change my groove. So I changed my damn groove and took off. That thing really hooked up there where we was running, and I pulled back away from him, and then last 10 laps, I just breezed, because my head was falling off. I don't know why, but ever since that wreck up in Michigan when Michael Andretti put me in the wall in that IROC race, my neck's been bothering me, and it bothered me tonight, and it usually don't bother me here in Bristol, so that's a bad sign.
Well, when Dale pulled in here, he couldn't even reach up to cut the switch off. That's what he was doing, was trying to ask me to cut the switches off in the car, and we wiped his face off, let him get some breath. Now, you've been ill for the last couple of days, and you were laying down most of the day. There was a question mark whether you'd be able to run at least half of the race tonight, and you made it for 500 laps. You got to be one tough customer.
Well, you know, it's like I said, his race team gets tougher every time I go, and it's hard for me to keep up pace with them. Ain't no lie, but you know, the guys do awful good. I can't thank them enough, and everybody back home is pulling for us. You know, all my family and Kelly, all my family couldn't come up tonight, my daughter Kelly and everybody, but you know, they all pulling for us, and we're working hard, and you know, we'll be back out there farm next week to try to build them chicken houses and do something out there.
Well, we'll let him get his breath. His 9th Winston Cup win and 29th career win overall. Dale Earnhardt wins it here at Bristol. Let's go to Dick Berggren.
And that was second place finisher Rusty Wallace, who's also trying to catch his breath. He's been here puffing, took a little bit of oxygen. Rusty, how do you feel?
I feel pretty good right now. I tell you, the cat run me hard. I tell you, I just run as hard as I could all night long. And about 15 laps, I got to admit, man, I just kind of run myself out. I drove so hard, I just gave it all I had, gave it 110% all night long. And that's all I can do. These guys did a great job tonight, just like they've been doing all year long. And if we keep these consistent finishes going, that's what this racing is all about. And I'm real proud of them.
One of the worst things that can happen to you when you're tired at the end of the race is to get a set of tires on that makes the car push or understeer, and that's what you had, wasn't it?
Yeah, I was pretty good for a little while, and then just really started fading away there at the end. The car got real pushy, but then again, I was getting tired, and I was driving the thing about halfway in the middle of the racetrack, and
really diming in the corner, which makes the car push real bad. Just did all I could, you know, just hit the back wall over there. I figured when I hit that wall in the back, I figured, man, I better straighten back out because I was about to go crazy there.
You came so close to winning. How do you respond to second place? You were just almost there.
Life's a summer gun, you know. You got to take them. But I'd rather take them seconds than I would last.
Well, meanwhile, the Earnhardt team is over here congratulating the Kodiak team. Everybody is congratulating everybody. It was a good race, Bob Jenkins.
Yeah, it was. It was a very grueling race, but it was well worth it for us, and I'm sure well worth it for the drivers. And our Winner's Circle interview has been brought to you by the Goodyear Tire and Rubber Company. No matter how far you go, Goodyear takes you home. So we'll be back with a wrap-up on what happened here this evening in just a moment. Once again, Dale Earnhardt, the winner here tonight at Bristol. The crowd is in no hurry to leave. They're enjoying the celebration down in front of them as Dale Earnhardt continues to receive congratulations down in victory lane. And Larry, it was an outstanding victory for Dale Earnhardt.
Bob, it really was. And if there was ever an example of a fraternity of people living together and you start to think alike, do Winston Cup teams think alike? Remember when Dale Earnhardt's crew told us that they felt that Rusty Wallace was probably running 11/10 with about 25 laps to go? And then what did Rusty Wallace follow up with, leaning against the pit wall after the race? He said I was going 110%. That's just about 11/10. I think that adds up there.
Let's go to Jerry Punch.
Well, we caught up with Richard Childress, the happy car owner here at Victory Lane. And RC, first of all, you were some questions of whether your driver would make it all night tonight, and he made it, and boy, in a way, did he make it. What a tremendous job by Dale. You got to be proud of this guy.
Yeah, you know, when he gets down like that, he's been under the weather a couple of days, but he came back like a champion, and, you know, I'm proud of him, the whole Wrangler GM Goodwrench team.
Those last pit stops were critical because Rusty Wallace's crew was all fired up, and they just about got you a couple times, but you guys were able to nick them every time on pit road.
Yeah, I gave all the guys a little rally a couple of pit stops to go. I said, boys, we're going to have to get with it because it's getting close, and they come through for us, and just proud of everybody tonight.
Were you a little bit concerned? We talked to Dale earlier today. I said, you're going to have a backup driver here? He said, oh, yeah, I got one. Said the guy's name's RC, Richard Childress. He'll climb in the car and finish. He's got a few thousand laps here at Bristol.
Yeah, but I couldn't have done the job he done tonight. He did a great job for us. And, you know, I know all the fans up here had to enjoy the race. It was a great race, and thank all the fans for showing up tonight.
Well, it was a super race, and again, Richard Childress, the car owner, tremendous win for Dale Earnhardt. Let's go down with Ricky Rudd is Dick Berggren.
And Ricky Rudd, you had a really good run tonight. It seemed as if as this race wore on that you went faster.
Well, I don't know if I don't really think that we got faster. I think we just started off at the same pace and everybody else got slower. They sort of came to me a little bit.
Well, everybody around here is taking oxygen and breathing hard except you. You seem like you could go another 500 laps.
Well, I got a few blisters here and there and a couple of cramps, and they were asking me if I needed oxygen when I got out of the car. I said, forget the oxygen. As soon as I get all my guts off my right side of my body and back over the left side, I'll feel pretty good. But no, I think the whole Motorcraft 14 tonight did a real good job. We were just a little bit short all night long. Earnhardt and Rusty Wallace were just about a half of a tenth of a second better, and as you know, 500 laps around here, that made the difference. We finished about a half a straightaway behind them.
Can you have fun when you're running third like that and trying to keep up, catch up all the time?
Well, it's really frustrating. You know, you're giving it up your all, and you can see them leaders right in front of you. You start with them on the brake, and then I mean, just inch away. You can drive as hard as you want, but then when you drive a little bit harder, you actually slow yourself down. So you've got to pick the pace that the car runs its fastest, and ours happened to be that we're just a little bit slow. So it really makes for a frustrating night here at Bristol, 500 laps, but it's frustrating in one respect, but then you look in your rearview mirror and you see a lot of them you're leaving behind, so it wasn't too bad.
How do you recover from a thing like this? This is obviously a physically exhausting experience. You just go home and sleep all day tomorrow?
Yeah. Well, I'll probably rest about 11 o'clock, and I'll be out on the lake jet skiing and stuff and playing a little bit, and I will sleep in a little bit, but you know, the biggest thing is just to get a breather. You know, after you sit out here and stretch a little bit, you can hop in the car and run another couple of laps, I believe.
Ricky Rudd, a fine third-place finish. Jerry Punches with Terry Labonte, who finished fourth. Jerry?
Well, after a record-setting pole run for Terry Labonte, the Budweiser Chevrolet, Terry, you had a good run tonight, but looks like you weren't exactly quick enough to run with Rusty and Dale.
No, we weren't. You know, we were pretty good up to about 300 laps, I guess. In the last couple hundred laps, the car started pushing, and we kept trying to change the tire stagger and working the car, and we just never really got it hooked up again.
This is not the car you came here and tested with. You came a couple of times and tested. This is a car that you ran at Wilkesboro, and you opted for it at the last minute. So given all those circumstances, you got to be pretty proud of the way the car ran tonight.
Well, you know, it ran good, you know, but we're a little disappointed with fourth. We really thought we had a good shot at winning tonight, and you know, the crew did a super job, and we just got off track a little bit and got beat.
But a rough evening, but you're going to another track has to be one of your favorites in a couple of weeks, and that's Darlington. That'll be on ESPN. That's a track where you ran your first race and had some of your best finishes. You got to look forward to going there.
Well, I am. I always look forward to going to Darlington. It's a fun track to go to, and I guess it's always kind of special because that's where I won my first race at, and so I think the Budweiser Chevy will run good down there.
Well, the Budweiser Chevrolet had a good run tonight, finishing fourth, and we'll see what happens a couple weeks from now on ESPN at Darlington.
And we understand that Greg Sykes has been doing some testing down at Darlington and has been doing quite well. Now, the top 10 finishers: Earnhardt the winner, Wallace second, followed by Ricky Rudd, Terry Labonte, and Richard Petty. And then 6 through 10, Bodine, Wilson, Gant, Elliott, and Neil Bonnet. And we'll be right back with more.